Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Odessa City Council, January 6, 2020, our new decade, to order. We're going to have an invocation tonight with Pastor Kevin Wendt from Grace Lutheran Church.
Oh, I was holding it down. There we go. Sorry. We pray for you, and thank you for serving. We pray. Gracious God, Heavenly Father, from you comes all rule and authority over the nations and states and cities of the world for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of those who do well. We humbly ask you to graciously regard these your servants in our city of Destin, these who make, administer, and judge the affairs of this city. Look with mercy upon them and grant them to bear the authority you've given them according to your command. Enlighten and defend them and give them wisdom and understanding, that under their reasoned and peaceable governance your people may be guarded and directed in righteousness and quietness and unity. Protect and prolong their lives, that we with them may show forth the praise of your holy name. We pray this in the name of him who is fully God, born fully man, to live the perfect life, to die the perfect sacrifice, to rise from the dead, the perfect resurrection and life, your Son and Savior from sin, ascended to heaven, and to return the last day to judge the living and the dead, Jesus Christ. He lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Mr. Overdeer, would you like to lead us in the pledge? All right, first up is the agenda approval. Council members, do you have an item?
I'd like to pull item 6C for discussion.
Item 6C.
Consent.
Okay, you want to pull item 6C off the consent agenda in a form of a motion? Do we need to vote on that, or is that you were just going to pull it?
That can just be pulled.
Okay. All right. Is there any other item, ladies or gentlemen? Seeing none, that's I'll entertain a motion to
I'll
approve
make
the
that
agenda.
motion, Mayor. Second.
All in favor? Ayes have it, so moved. Item 1A, approval of the minutes, October 7th, 2019, regular city council meeting.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I got a motion.
Second.
Got a second. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved. Item 1B, approval of the minutes, October 31st, or October 21st, 2019, regular city council meeting.
I'll make that motion, Mayor. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved. Next on the agenda is the recognition of the 2019 Holiday Decorating Contest winners. And we'll step up here. I'll go ahead and just read from our press release. The City of Destin is pleased to announce the winners of this year's holiday outdoor decorating contest. The contest proved to be difficult to judge as many Destin homes, businesses, and organizations did a fantastic job showing their holiday spirit through decorations. The city received multiple phone calls and emails pointing out locations that had done an outstanding job of decorating their property. This information was given to the judges who went throughout Destin with the challenging task of picking the best of the best. The winners will be recognized at the January 6th meeting tonight. So we're going to start. I just want to thank everyone who participated, and the judges especially. And their names will be held in confidentiality for their own protection. The best home is Jim and Barbara Telford, 19 Indian Bayou Drive. Are they here? Thank you for making a lot of people happy. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Best business is Burrito del Sol, 515 Harbor Boulevard. Are they here tonight? Anybody here? Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Here, cheese. Congratulations. The best organization is Corpus Christi's Catholic Church, 307 Beach Drive. Job well done. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sure. Go ahead.
I just like to thank the city for doing this for the last 15 years we've participated, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Best condominium, Holiday Isle Towers, 770 Gulf Shores Drive. Nobody's here? Okay. Best of Holiday, Stephen and Teresa Abear, 716 Main Street. And I got to drive by their house every single night, and I smiled every single night that I drove by. Congratulations, guys. And then the last category is Best on the Harbor, and that went to the Emerald Grand, 10 Harvard Boulevard. Is anyone here? Ah.
How are you? Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. Because I know you had something.
No, not really.
One more. Yep. Gotta get the official government picture.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys. All right, thank you. Item number 3, public comments on the agenda items that are not public hearings and any other matters not on the agenda. I've only got one yellow card tonight. After a person comes up to speak, I'll look out in the audience, and if anyone wants to come up for make a comment, their 3-minute comment, you're more than welcome. I want to remind everyone they'll have another opportunity at the very end of the meeting to do the same thing. Up first is Ed Rogers. Just want to remind everybody, Ed, just state your name and your address, and then you got 3 minutes.
Ed Rogers, 500 Harbor Boulevard, and Happy New Year to the council. I'm here to talk about the letter from Lance Johnson to the city council dated 12/16. Actually, it's dated 12/11/19, and we talked about it at the city council meeting just before the new year. And it was a request for direction from the city council regarding proposed changes to livery vessel and marine construction requirements. I'm not sure what that request means as far as them looking for direction from you guys, but what I'm here to ask is that when you give them direction, to ask them to make us part of the decision-making process, bring us in and let us have a say. You know, what we're afraid of is, I had a meeting with Mr. Lewis the day after the last city council meeting. It was very productive, very nice guy, and I felt good after the meeting. I didn't feel that everything's completely resolved, but I felt like we could probably have a give and take and move forward in a positive direction. But, you know, we're afraid that the city's going to say, hey, yeah, we'll have a meeting. We've come up with all the ideas. We'll bring in and tell you the way it's going to be. And then that's your input. And I think that's the wrong direction. You know, in the past, the city's had a propensity for lawsuits. And I think a lot of times it's because, you know, they don't understand my business or the business that they're trying to affect. And they try to pass an ordinance. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't really take care of the objective they're trying to take care of. And, you know, they box us in a corner, and the only thing we can do is sue. But I think if you guys gave them direction and said, hey, bring the pontoon, the livery guys in and lay out your issues and let them give you some back and forth, we can probably, we probably could do something positive. But the way that it's gone in the past and the way that we saw this letter, we really don't feel that anybody's actually taken into effect how we run our business, and really that they have any understanding whatsoever of our business. All of you guys do something to make a living, and I wouldn't dare try to tell you how to run your business, and I certainly wouldn't try to pass an ordinance that affected your business without talking to you and really understanding. And you guys are in that position that you guys get to make those rules. And so it's important to really understand how these things will affect us. And the stuff that was laid out would affect us in a really negative way. Mr. Marlar really hit it on the head at that meeting when he said it could possibly put half the guys out of business. It could. And so I'm just asking the city to direct those guys to include us in putting together whatever comes back to you. Thank you.
Hold on one second. Does any council members have any questions or any comments they would like to ask? Go ahead, Rodney.
I don't believe that this council has to allow you or anyone else to speak or participate in any way, short, or fashion in this process, but that's not the way we operate. We've always allowed, you know, everyone to voice their opinion and encourage you guys to come in and put in your 2 cents and try to help us figure it all out. And that's what we're going to continue to do. We've never shut you out or anybody else out. We've tried to keep everything above board. But I can tell you one thing, and I think I can speak for the majority of this council. If you want to get an attorney, then you get you an attorney, and that's when all the talking and everything else ceases, and you can get your attorney, and we'll use our attorneys, and that'll be the end of it. But I'm sure we encourage everyone to come in and let's sit down and yeah, let's work it out. It's always been like that, and we will continue to be that way.
Mr. Braden, I'm encouraged to hear you say that, but the facts are, recently I received a letter saying that I was breaking the law, and when I went back and looked, I couldn't find a single conversation. I went back as far as 2002, not one conversation talking about pontoon boats parked in the livery business that we operate, a business that is used specifically for livery and nothing else. And I was told that that was the law. And my understanding of the way that these laws work is the interpretation of the law is what the city council intended at the time they voted it. And if there wasn't a single conversation about us, code enforcement shouldn't be allowed to decide what the law is and send us a letter and then tell us that that letter is our due process. That's not the American way. That's not giving us an opportunity to speak and participate. That's just, really haphazardly just coming out of nowhere when we've done, I've owned this property 11 years and jumped through all kinds of hoops to specifically do what I do. And so, it's really disconcerting for us when we get those kinds of things. And I'm glad you said that, because that's the way we would like to operate. We would like to participate and be able to just tell you why we think a proposed ordinance maybe won't make sense. And the city could tell us why it does make sense, and maybe we can each have an understanding. But when you just get a letter and there's no explanation and you're told your due process is that letter. I mean, when you say, well, you get a lawyer, then it's over and we get our lawyer. When you box somebody in a corner and they have no other options, especially when you've invested $1.5 million on a piece of property, another $1 million in a business, you have no other option than to fight, and we don't want to. We would rather work with the city. We would rather, this city is important to us. I mean, I love this city, and I own commercial property, I own residential property. I'm very proud of this city. And so we don't want to fight, but we want an opportunity to work with you guys.
Yeah. Gentlemen, let me hop in. I think we're on the same page to a degree. We've set up a short-term rental task force bringing industry in with regards to passing some of the short-term rental regulations over the last 2 years. I think that's a precedent we set. I don't think we need a task force in this circumstance. I think if my assessment right now is that we've got a bundle of proposed new ordinances that have come before the council. It sounds like there's a few of them that the livery industry is going to take some issue and have some sticking points with. Ms. Kopp and Lance, is there a way within a month or so to set up I'd say it may not even be necessary to do a workshop with council sitting there, but to have an open meeting with a set agenda so that we can have the industry come and sit down with you guys in a semi-formal fashion, so that you guys can hammer out some of these final issues, at which point, if it seems that we've got everything but a few points or all of them resolved, then we can, as the council, chew through it without having to cause a whole lot of kerfuffle up here in the middle of a public meeting. So as long as we have the buy-in.
I'd be happy to set that up.
We have the ordinance advertised and scheduled, the livery vessel ordinance changes scheduled to go to LPA on January 16th, and then to council in February. All of those meetings would have public hearings. If that's not sufficient and you want us to have a workshop before then, we can reschedule the LPA or continue it to a date certain so that we don't have to re-advertise. But as of now, there's an ordinance in process that would involve public hearings.
So the LPAA is basically our advisory panel to work through some of these kinds of issues. So the industry really needs to be at that meeting to participate in that discussion before they make recommendations to us. I think being
Yes.
a public forum in a public setting, that would probably, if you really would like certain individuals on the council to attend that LPA meeting, well, you could call them up. You have open access to any of the members here. That may be the way to do it without calling a special workshop or something like that. I think that would probably be suffice with the LPA, and we get the minutes of it.
And I don't know the legality, but, we had a meeting, Mike Abity, that owns Gilligan's, and I, with Mr. Lewis and Mr. Forgione. It was very productive. But, it was a 2-on-2. And, at one point, Mr. Lewis said, we're going to be civil here. But I felt like it was constructive, and they were able to kind of tell us where they were coming from, and I think they got where we were coming from. And so that kind of interaction, I think, is important. I don't know if you get that in like an open forum LPA, and I don't know if it's legal for us to be in a closed meeting like that, but I know that was productive for us, at least in our short term.
I'm sure that staff would be happy to meet with you. There's no legal requirement for an open meeting if you're just meeting with us over here with staff. If you're bringing in the city council or another board of the city, then there may be sunshine law issues where they can't meet in a closed meeting. But I would suggest that we meet on staff. We would listen to your input. The ordinance is in the works. It's not final yet.
And we'd like to do it before it's like in the works, because
Okay. And the other, and beyond that, it is possible to do what you're saying at the LPA meeting. That's what it's for, to take in the public comment, and the LPA can make recommendations based on what it hears and all of the competent substantial evidence that comes forward to it. And council's not bound by the LPA's recommendation either, so there will also be 2 more public hearings in front of the council. So there's going to be plenty of time, but notwithstanding all of that, staff is certainly willing to hear any of the stakeholders. We often have those meetings when we're doing ordinances.
glad to hear it.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Got another card? All right, my next up will be John Fuller. John, just hit the button, state your name, your address. You got 3 minutes. You want to clear us?
Johnny Fuller, 172 Harbor Boulevard, Tailfins Pontoons and Restaurants. I don't know, I was frustrated back there. I just listened to Mr. Braden, appalled at someone saying, we'll get our lawyer, you get your lawyer. We'll figure this out. That's very, very frustrating to me. And I've heard that conversation before through some city council members. I'm tired of the targeting, the prejudice, and not making everyone conform to the same rules on the harbor. I do everything in a first-class operation there and trying to make sure that everything's up and above board, but I seem to get targeted, or delivery vessels, or any individuals that affiliated with me get targeted, and it's getting frustrating. And if it has to come down to Ed and us, I'll be happy to join you. Mike, anybody here with an attorney to have to proceed with this. Yeah, I love Destin. I've been here 20 years, and I'm frustrated over what happens. Looking through some of this paperwork is we have to fill out an application, a renewal application every year with all the different pertinent things where you have to get specs and engineering and designs, and it's ridiculous. Once you've jumped through those hoops to do it when you first started your operation, it should be it. And then you should have a renewal notice and say, okay, whatever the fee is, which was $75 a couple of years ago. I think you raised it to $100 now. And who knows, when that's going to stop. But the main reason why I'm here is I'm getting frustrated with the targeting and the prejudice of this certain areas, with certain, whether if it's code enforcement, city council members, etc. And it's very frustrating to me. And I'm going to be behind these guys 110% because I'm just looking for a fair operating field here. And it hasn't happened here. And I've been here 20 years. I still feel like an outsider. It's very frustrating to me. So with that being said, my application has always been complete to the fullest prior to anything happening on the harbor. And last year they came at me and they physically gave this code enforcer gave my pontoon guy a ride up and down on a Sunday morning at 9 o'clock asking where my city stickers were. Well, I had my check, all my T's and I's taken care of, and they said, oh, we apologize, after they pretty much browbeated my pontoon captain. So it's very frustrating to me, once again, to see all the regulations and red tapes that we have to go through to operate here in Destin. Once I've filled it out completely and satisfied it, and with my development orders, and through this different city managers, different code enforcers that I've been through, it just seems like it's a never-ending thing here. And I'd appreciate, whether it's the LPA meeting or a workshop, I want to do one of those if there's going to be some changes made. And if I have to come up with a new application every year, that it takes time and energy and effort. I mean, we're trying to run a restaurant and a pontoon business, and then I got to spend 4 or 5 days with an accountant or an attorney to fill out your paperwork. And it's very frustrating to me.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, anybody from the audience? I'll get you next, Carrie, or you're just going up, throw trash in the trash? Going up next? Come on up, sir. State your name, your address. Got 3 minutes.
I'm Ron Sandstad, and my wife and I, Michelle, live at 337 Calhoun. And I just want to thank the opportunity that we've had to do our banners on Main Street. And I want to say thank you, the council and city staff, Tim Piedenpaul and Lisa Firth, for their help and ideas on how to do this stuff. And because I couldn't do it without them. Anyway, I'd like to propose that my organization buy more banner poles for Destin. I'd like to see banner poles on Airport Road, and in another 2 weeks we're going to have an auction where we're selling off their original artwork at La Paz Restaurant. And it'll be a silent auction, so you can go in starting the 9th and put your name down and how many hundreds of dollars you want to pay for this artwork. But the whole idea is to raise money and try to put it back into Destin. And I was told by Tim that a banner pole cost about $300. So I'd like to propose that my organization buy 8 banner poles that are then placed on Airport Road. Now the banners have been coming down off of Main Street, and they've been going to the community center, and they look great there, Lisa. And been going over to City Hall and hanging up there, and we want to continue that. I don't want to roll these banners up after we've used them and retired them and stick them in a corner. I want to see them out on the street. I think it makes Destin a better place, and I just want to thank all you guys for your help. We're getting it done. All right.
Thank you, Surya.
Ron, excuse me, one question. First of all, Lance, do you foresee any issue with the banners on Airport Road? Just so we could let Ron know, do you think that would be a problem?
The only thing we would want to touch base with engineers to make sure that wind loads and things like that, for safety purposes, are going to be met.
That's what I was saying. And,
yeah. Just like we did on Main Street.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd have you guys buy the poles. And that discussion needs to happen as to how we do that. Do I donate the money then to a special fund for Destin, or how do you want to do that? What would be make you happiest?
With council's permission, I think if Mr. Sandstad just worked with me directly on that, I think we can come up with a plan.
Sure. And Ron, thanks for everything you and your group did. It's fantastic. Thanks for everything.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron. We've talked about expanding that whole idea in different ways throughout the city in terms of some sort of unifying theme. I think we talked about even trying to involve Gulf Power and seeing if we could hang things on their poles, and they actually seemed pretty amenable to that idea. So what y'all started is an amazing, beautiful thing, and it really hits home that sense of community. So thank you for what you started, and hopefully we can see it sort of spiral and expand throughout the city.
I'm hoping soon that we'll have no Gulf Power poles and we'll just have banners up there. Carrie, would you like to come up and address the council, please?
Carrie Harbarger, Spring Lane. I would like to thank you for hearing me, and also I wanted to quiz the not the council, but perhaps the staff could refresh, refresh everybody's memory or where we stood. And I never would call a business out, but I want to defend the council a little bit on this parking issue. I've been coming to these meetings for a very long time and brainstormed with a lot of people that have sit on this council what we're going to do about this parking. Could somebody please reiterate how a business opened with such little parking that currently searches to purchase or lease off-site parking? Does that make sense? Without saying names of a business, did we not enter into an insurance bond with a company that was supposed to follow through with development and parking? Am I wrong here? Am I saying something wrong? There was never any proper parking to be threatening lawsuits against the city to open that business from the gentleman that spoke 2 people ago. Am I wrong? Can the staff direct that? If I remember, they issued a bond, an insurance bond, that said that they were going to complete parking and have proper with the development. Am I wrong? Can somebody refresh me, staff? Mayor, you're not familiar?
I think you're pretty close.
Am I close?
Yeah.
Because I do remember I sit in all these meetings, and I do remember they never had the proper parking to begin with. And we've been banging our heads. They didn't even have proper parking for employees. And I happen to know for a fact that they currently are searching to lease off-site parking. How do they possibly have? And I'm not trying to be a butt to any small businesses, but we're all here banging our heads for the same reasons. We're just trying to make it compatible for our city to have the parking. Did that company, did the business not have to have a bond when they had their development order? With their development order, they had a bond because they didn't finish the development. They were able to open their doors prior to having the proper parking.
I don't think we know what property you're specifically talking about, and also I wouldn't want to speak about somebody's private property that could result in a code enforcement quasi-judicial hearing here. So let's talk after the meeting, and maybe we can answer your questions.
I might be wrong, so
We'll talk, 'cause
I
I
just
don't
sit
know.
in these meetings, and it seems to me, I just remember there wasn't proper parking for that business to begin with. And then recently, I am aware that they're trying to lease parking because they don't have it. That was all. I don't have a dog in that fight, by the way. I just wanted to reiterate, and perhaps maybe somebody could inform the people, but
Carrie?
we'll get to it. Thank you.
Carrie, I got one answer for you.
Sure.
In the past, and I think I know the business you're talking about, all they did was hire an attorney or somebody to pencil whip a parking study that says, where they're parking here and they're parking there. And in the past, the city has accepted it.
I'm sorry, that's correct. I do
believe
remember. They did their own personal parking study and
correct.
submitted it to the city, and our city adopted it in their development order without the proper parking. I think I remember that.
That is correct.
Thank you. I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Sorry for the, thank you.
Marcy?
Happy New Year. Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. I am no longer a member of the Short-Term Rental Task Force. I resigned my position. For those of you who don't know, I think I will serve you better as a citizen. Our work was done, but I wanted to reiterate before you hear item 4I, the request for direction from City Council on amendments to short-term rental ordinance. I just wanted to reiterate from my last statements here at the podium that in that meeting, we had decided, or correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe somebody else can come up and speak and correct me or agree with me, that we weren't looking for amendments to the ordinance. In the end, we were just looking for additional comments to the application where they would agree that this, that, and the other. And I also wanted to reiterate, because trash cans were such an issue, that the reason that we came up with the 6 cans, I don't even remember how it was said. Anyways, yeah, 1 per 6, thank you, was based on information that came from Waste Management's representative that was there. And he gave us the information that pertained to how much garbage went for however many people, and that's how that came up. There were a couple of items that went back and forth, 1 per 5, 1 per 6, and the 1 per 6 was the one that came out of that committee. But I wanted to reiterate for you guys and the public that it wasn't really in the end about making amendments to an ordinance, It was about the application document. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Is anyone in the audience? Oh, I got a couple hands. We'll go with Bill and then Ken.
Hi, Bill Reddington, 722 Vintage Circle, Destin, Florida. As I read through the potential changes that the short-term rental people came up, I'm just going to ask once again that you table all that and have Joey continue to enforce what you have on the books already. Okay? I don't think I'll get any disagreement here with the fact that there was limited code enforcement before he showed up here. Okay? And the result of all this, like the 36 Bert Harris claims, of which I've also heard there's many more coming. Okay, on those first 36, it represented approximately $36 million worth of lost value to those people that filed that claim. Okay? If another 50 to 80 do that, I mean, that makes the cities potentially responsible for about $86 million or $80 million or whatever $1 million because of lost value. Now, I printed the Bert Harris Act, which is by the state of Florida today. I was so crazy that I didn't have a chance to really study it real hard. I will do that probably tomorrow. But that's why I say, please just have Joey do what he's supposed to do. He's rather obvious that he's doing that by the figures that are in that 490 pages that were at tonight's meeting, okay? And because I even got a call today from somebody that owns 2 houses, okay? And things like the stickers in the cars, that's, you know, you got a sign that says how many parking places, okay? And part of the reality of that is some person that I talked to did a remodel on their house by way of the code, by way of pulling permits, by way of everything, and he got changed his driveway so that he could park 8 cars there. I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent, but then with your new laws that came out with you adjusting the parking that he has on his own private property, you said he could only have 5. And last year or a year before that, you gave him 8. So certain things like that, I guess I just don't understand. Why don't you give this gentleman the opportunity to do what he does for a living? Okay, we've obviously beefed it up because you just hired 2 more people or are attempting to hire 2 more people. I see lots of new trucks out there, okay? So there's obviously people out there. Sometimes I'd sure like to see them north of Highway 98, but I know that they'll get to that at some point, because there's a whole lot of places in this town where you got 6 cars in the front yard and the driveway and boats and all the rest of it. And I don't personally care, but if the ordinance is good for down there, why isn't it good for over here? Okay, so that's what I'm asking once again, is just let's revisit this, have Joey do his job, okay, and try and make the people happy and try and avoid 80 lawsuits.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Wampler.
Good afternoon, or good evening, and Happy New Year. Ken Wampler, 310 Laripe Loop. I'm here to speak on behalf of short-term vacation rental. I was on that task force, and as Ms. Bell said, we spent the majority of our time, just to reiterate, communicate and educate. The only 2 things that we're asking the City Council to take action on relative to the proposed changes is to change the renewal date to the last day of February. So that would be a change that you all would have to adopt, and also to increase the parking violation fee to the maximum allowed by Florida statute. Plain and simple, that's the only 2 things we're asking you to take action on. Everything else is currently already in the ordinance relative to parking and trash. As reiterated, when we talked about trash cans, we talked about parking passes and all that. Joey's staff isn't going to take and inspect vehicles for parking passes. Either they have a violation or they don't have a violation. If they do, then it's a violation. If the trash is in the trash can and at the curb when it's it's supposed to be and not when it's not supposed to be, there's no violation. If the trash is not in the trash can, there's a violation. Plain and simple. No reason to change anything other than the renewal date and the parking violation. So my request to you as a city council is that those are the only two items you need to take action on tonight, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Do you think we can get this done between the two of us, or does everybody need to lawyer up?
I think we got it done the last time we talked about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Is there anyone else that'd like to come up? Come on up, sir.
Mike Abity, 530 Harbor Boulevard, here to discuss the delivery vessel issue. Kind of hard of hearing, so I missed some of what you said. Mr. Destin, were you going to allow us to participate in this?
Well, I'm just one member of council. I was encouraging the council to give staff the latitude to meet with you guys and try to hammer out the sticking points that you have in the bundle of proposed ordinances and hopefully do it in a way that can be resolved. Because I tend to agree with the sentiment that I'm not 100% sure that LPA is the best forum to try to do that in. But if you guys can all sit down, set an agenda that talks to the 3 to 4 points, because we haven't even discussed the picking and sticking points. So my suggestion is bring those to council, or bring those to staff. And once we get some of that stuff ironed out, we may be able to tweak some things and stay on a schedule that everybody finds agreeable. And that way everybody has had buy-in and we don't necessarily step on a whole lot of toes trying to solve some of the stuff that I think mostly the industry agrees with.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I was going to address some of those issues tonight, but if we're going to get some input later down the road, I'll save my objections and my concerns to a later time. One issue a couple of issues that I did have were several of these issues on this 8-point list. I talked to 7 different people in our industry, in the delivery industry today alone, and a couple more over the last couple of weeks. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong. The general consensus is that the delivery vessel industry is being targeted. Okay. I also, along with Ed Rogers, I also received a letter of violation on my property, and I received 2 letters of violation on a piece of property that I rent. That's not what I'm here to discuss tonight. The only thing I want to mention about that issue is I've been in this business for 30 years. I've been renting boats. I've been at this location for 23 years renting boats. I've been following all the rules and regulations, and now all of a sudden I'm doing the same things I've always done, and now it seems like I'm breaking the law. I'm not doing anything different than I've done for the last 23 years. So if it was good for 23 years, what makes it not good today? I've owned that property. My company's owned that property since 1969. That was before Destin was even a city. Okay, I've been in business at this location, renting boats on and off for 30 years. Following the rules and regulations, we feel that we're under, the general consensus of the people I talk to, they feel they're under siege from the city. I'm not saying the city council, I'm not saying code enforcement, from the city of Destin in general. It's a shame. I've been vacationing here for 50 years. I live here for 30 years. I've been in business here for 30 years. It's a shame that we feel that our city is the enemy, treating us like the enemy. Is this the way you want to treat your citizens? Is this the way you want your public to feel, that they're under siege from the city, that the city's our enemy? Y'all came up 3 years ago, came up with a set of rules and regulations for the delivery vessel industry. We didn't like it, but we followed all the rules and regulations. I've been following all the rules and regulations for the last 3 years. Now all of a sudden, well, you know, they follow those rules and regulations. Let's come up with some new ones, maybe to make their business tougher, to make it harder on them. And that's what it seems like, is that we followed all the rules you put 3 years ago, so now you're going to come up with some new rules, you know, that maybe you're going to make it tougher for us to follow. You know, it's not a secret that the pontoon business industry and the jet ski industry is under siege. All we're asking is this, guys, and Ms. Ramswell, is that a lot of these points in here specifically target the delivery industry. Parking needs to be done this for the livery industry. This has to be done for the livery industry. If it's good for my industry, it should be good for every industry. If I have to have one spot for every employee, every restaurant, every snowball stand, every hot dog stand, every gift shop, every condominium should follow the same rules and regulations. Okay? We don't need a separate set of rules and regulations just for the livery industry. So a lot of these rules and regulations are already on the books if they would be enforced. But the same set of rules should follow for everyone. Okay? One thing I will bring up in this list is item number 7, where we have to, or item number 8, where we have to totally file our application brand new 100% every year. We've been doing it about 50% for the last 2 years. Now they want to waive that and they want to make us do it. I've been in business for 50 years. I've had at least 15 different businesses in 3 states, 7 or 8 counties, half a dozen cities. I've run all kind of business. I've had liquor licenses, restaurants, nightclubs, dealt with alcohol beverage boards. Never in my life, in 50 years, have I ever had to submit to any government entity a complete 100% application every year. It's a burden on me, just like Mr. Fuller said, is that we have to hire people to, I mean, it's not a simple process to fill out these applications. They're a complicated application. We all got to go bother the fire marshal every year. We all got to go bother, we have to get, just all the paperwork that it takes. It's ridiculous to have to redo all of that every year. If you say we got to do it, we got to do it, but now you know why we feel that we're being targeted, that we're being under siege, and it's,
Thank you, Mike.
To me, it's too much government.
Okay, thanks. All right, thank you, Mike.
Okay,
Time out.
thank you.
Come on.
Hi, Sherry Andrews, 5 Calhoun Avenue. 2020 marks my 50th year of living in Destin. I grew up in a family business. Little business started in the garage of our house. Y'all might be familiar with it, the Destin Log. From there, my family started another business, which is now on its 3rd generation. I did the same thing with my water sport business. I started it 12 years ago, and I'm at the point where I'm ready to pass it on to my son. We have done everything council has asked us to do. We have done backflips. I was unaware. We did get a letter. Everybody got code letters about the parking. I just purchased a $500,000 piece of property on Mountain Drive to store boats 3 months out of the year to satisfy that issue. Next issue, apparently there's some war coming down the way, and it's going to affect us. I told my son today, I said, I'm scared. I said, I don't own my property. I rent from Howard Group. It'd be very easy for them to come along and say, you know what, these guys are making it tough on us. We're going to make it tough on you. And I feel like the rug's going to be pulled out of me any minute. I don't know what else I could do at my age in this town. I don't know what my son could do. I just ask that you let us continue having a family-owned business. Every one of these vendors, every one of these pontoon vendors, we're not Walmart Pontoon Company. We're all family-oriented businesses. We all care about our businesses. We care about Destin. We want to abide by the rules. But I feel like everybody else, every time we turn around, in the summertime, it was the livery. In the wintertime, it's the parking on the harbor. Now you want us to go have a parking attendant come into every boat that comes on our lot. I share a lot with the Howard Group. There's 20 other businesses at my lot. What happens when my boat comes at 8 o'clock in the morning? I get there, our parking lot's full. My first boat doesn't go out until 9 o'clock. What am I going to do? Those people are in Sea Chase Water Sports parking spots. I have 56 designated spots. What do I do with all those people that are in my spots? What happens when they come back at noon and they've got a nice parking spot and now they want to go to Bertula's or they want to go down to Dewey's for lunch? Well, they've got a nice parking spot where I'm at, but my next customer that comes in for their afternoon ride, they're not going to have a parking spot because they're down at Dewey's or they're at Bertula's enjoying lunch or they're down shopping at Harbor Walk. You know, you're putting an undue burden on us, and I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared for me. I'm scared for my son. I don't know what we'll do. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Before I close this portion of the meeting, we move on to the city manager's report. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 4A. Take it away, Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4A is a budget
Sorry,
amendment.
Ray. Clean me up. I hit the button. Go ahead.
Item 4A is a budget amendment for engineering. This is a housekeeping matter related to the transfer of the engineering division earlier in December from the Public Services Department to the Community Development Department and transferring monies so that those folks can get paid out of the correct accounts. We're looking for a motion to approve this transfer of right around $216,000 from Public Services account to engineering account.
I'll go ahead and make that motion. I move that the City Council authorize the budget amendment transfer of funds for the salary and benefits in the amount of $216,000 for the city engineer, engineering assistant 2, and stormwater floodplain manager from account 0151460 to account 0154161.
Second. Okay, I got a motion, I got a second. Is there any discussion? Any council member? Seeing none? Is your button not working? Vote is unanimous, so moved. Item number B.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4B is the FY20 strategic plan summary sheet brought before council for your approval. The information that was added to this sheet was received from council during the visioning session in November, and subsequently those minutes were approved at a previous council meeting. The item is before you for your consideration as the summary sheet for reference.
I'm going to make a motion to adopt the FY20 strategic plan summary.
Got a motion? Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. I just wanted to so we've seen this in a couple different versions as it's been improved upon and different changes have been made. And it looked like the version that was in our packet might have been the finalized version. And I just wanted to make sure it was not, or if it was, that there are some edits made. As I explained to Lance earlier, journalism and working for papers runs in my family, and errors just jump out at me. So I took the liberty of trying to make this more consistent and an Oxford comma where, you know, if we've got it in one place, make sure it's all the way through. Just piddly things, but they contribute to making a really professional looking document. So again, I provided that to you, and I hope to see some of these sorted out.
I appreciate Dr. Ramswell making those edits for us, and we will absolutely make those corrections as part of this process.
Just for the record, I'll second that motion.
Right. And Ms. Ramswell did use purple, which is a more friendlier edit color, right?
Thank you. I did that intentionally. It's not red.
Exactly. That's why I took notice of that. All right. So we have a motion. We have a second. Seeing no further discussion, go ahead, vote. Ayes have it, so moved. Item C.
Item 4C is back in December the 16th, council, during the December the 16th council meeting, council requested that staff bring back some funding options for the future undergrounding project of utilities throughout Destin. And Mr. Farmer has put together a list of options that we currently have available to the council for their information. And Mr. Farmer is here to answer any questions if you should have any.
Does any council members have any questions? Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be more than happy to weigh in. Why not, for the sake of the public and the betterment of perhaps a discussion that might follow, Mr. Farmer, would you indulge us and just quickly just go down the bullet list and tell us what you suggested?
I don't have the actual list in front of me. I forgot it in the office, but from my memory, I think I can get most of it. The first item was the recently passed half-cent sales tax that was passed in the county. It started last year, and I believe, based on where the revenue has been coming in, we've been talking about getting about $850,000 to $900,000, but it looks like we're going to be really closer to about $1.1 to $1.2 million, and we will get that for an additional 9 years. The second item would be increasing our franchise fee with the electricity utility once a final agreement is reached, and that could bring in an additional $850,000, and that would go on in perpetuity or until you choose to reduce it back to its original rate. And just remember that the half-cent sales tax that we talked about before, that will expire in 2028, assuming that the county doesn't propose to extend it. Another item that we've talked about, I know internally within the staff, is possibly looking at increasing some of the impact fees. That number would really be primarily based on whether they got increased or not, as well as how much new development came on board that would cause that funding source to be fulfilled. Another item is a public service tax. We don't currently charge it on any of our utilities. The tax could be up to a 10% tax, but the way that it's charged, it's based on energy prices from like 1976, and so it nets down to about a 6% increase, and that would be something new that we don't currently charge. You can always use some general fund dollars, and I would not discount that option, but in the future, as if property values continue to rise, that would be a feasible option to use for the undergrounding. Also, we have other franchise fees, gas, garbage, water, whatever. We could increase those as appropriately to help cover the cost of this undergrounding. And then, of course, the Harbor CRA, and this is just based on an estimate, a pro forma estimate, beginning in about 2025, we could probably siphon off about $700,000 a year to help with the funding, as well as the Town Center CRA beginning in about 2029, around $700,000. And that really is primarily based on how much property values hold in those two areas. And with the Town Center in particular, that currently owes the city a little over $2 million. So that's about the time period we would have all of that paid back, and those funds would be available for use at your desire. But remember, the Harbor and the Town Center CRA funds can only be spent in those areas.
Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you. So my first comment is I would like to not see funding being taken from our CRAs, particularly the Harbor or the Town Center CRA, because aren't they in debt? They've been struggling forever and are just starting to get their head above water, right?
That's correct, but that funding, we're not talking about using that funding for approximately 9 to 10 more years. So that funding is not going to be, would not be available until that money is paid back to the city, which is around 2029.
Oh, well, I would be opposed to that one. And just sort of reviewing the different options here, I'm all for the impact fees. I think that makes sense. It's just like we use impact fees to offset fire expenses and other things of that nature. Tell me about the public service tax that you've got here. what is, it says 10% of net to 6%. 10% of what?
10% of your energy bill. And so the reason it's net to 6% is because that tax, based on legislation that's been passed at the state level, you can only charge the tax based on the energy prices that were in place, and I may be wrong about the year, but I think it's 1979, and that's what your actual tax is based on. So it's not a true 10% tax. It nets out to around 6% of your overall bill.
And so you said energy. Clearly you don't mean electricity because that's a separate line item.
Well, that it would be electricity. You could also charge it, I believe, on the Okaloosa gas bill also.
Okay, because I see up here the first item listed is adding another 2% electricity franchise fee.
That the franchise fee is different from the public service tax. Those are two totally different taxes.
Right, but that still comes back to our people's pocket. And I have to tell you, my electric bill is a nightmare, especially when I'm running my AC.
No.
So, in fact, I sat here or at home when I was going over this, and you know, it doesn't sound like when you talk about 2% to an electricity franchise fee, but you know, I'm thinking, okay, a $500 bill in the summer, that's, you know, if you look at 2% of that, that's what, $10, which doesn't sound like much, but when you're getting those bills and you're like, ooh, it's $4.96, and then you get one and it's $5.07, and I'm not kidding, my bills get that high in the summer because our house is older and we probably need more insulation and a new AC, but that's neither here nor there. The point being, I mean, even $10 makes a difference, so I worry about that, but it sounds feasible, even though that is, you know, going to be hard to swallow. I like the impact fees. I am against the harbor CRA funding. And I know, I mean, you guys think about how hard it was for us to raise millage, just a tiny iota. I think people are going to go ballistic if they're seeing all these new fees and taxes and surcharges and such. I'm not sure what the answer is, but those are my personal thoughts on a few of the items to consider.
So I'll hop in. I think that the realistic trajectory of if we are going to successfully underground the city, it is going to be a 10 to 20 year process. And the only way that you can really practically guarantee that it'll get done so that you don't do half the project and then the winds of change occur, you change out people on this council, and you know, budgets are always tight, and we just go, well, we'll tackle the next mile of undergrounding next year. Oh, we'll do it the next year, and then you just give up on the project because the funding is not earmarked to doing specifically undergrounding. And the only way any of this stuff can really get earmarked in perpetuity from a funding source is likely the franchise fee increase from 4% to 6%. If it is an increase, you have to earmark it so that it is available for future councils, and that money sits basically in an account that cannot be used for anything other than undergrounding. I sympathize with the 2% increase. I pay power bills too. We've got $10,000 power bills at our businesses, and that's $200. So there is a return on investment for everyone in this city when we go and we pick ourselves up by our own bootstraps and invest in our own infrastructure, which is what we are proposing to do, which is when the next Hurricane Michael comes through and hits us pretty good, we're going to be more nimble. We're going to have a system that's more reliable and gets turned back on sooner and faster than if it was to hit and we haven't undergrounded anything. So the way I see it, there is no cavalry but ourselves. We can't wait for somebody else to underground our system, make our city safer. There is a return on investment, but I think out of all of this list, it's going to end up having to be earmarked, and the only one that really can be earmarked in any meaningful form in perpetuity is going to be the franchise fee, and it has to be enshrined in the franchise agreement. So that's the likely primary source if we were going to pull it off. As far as I see it, there is money that can be thrown at certain segments. This is likely going to go down once we can get a cost per mile. We're going to have to figure out how many phases and sub-phases are we going to tackle at one time. There may be money that you simply can basically bond against, which is you put the franchise fees that you're going to collect over the next 10 years as collateral on a loan so you can get the money up front. Then there's also, as the money rolls in from the half-cent sales tax, if you have a council up here that is interested in spending that chunk of money for that year on another mile of undergrounding, well, then you can do it. But it's hard to earmark it and bind the hands of a future council to make that decision with that pot of money, because there's no attendant franchise agreement that is enshrining and saying, no, that money actually is always going to be only used for undergrounding. So it can be used. It's probably a pretty good use for it, but I can't guarantee that in 5 years from now, when none of us are on this council, or some of us are, that you'll decide that the half-cent sales tax money is going to be utilized for undergrounding. I think the only way that we can invest in perpetuity to make sure that this project continues to get done is to earmark the funds that flow into the city through the franchise arrangement. The impact fees, I somewhat disagree with the appropriateness of impact fees. While there could be some portion of it, I do believe that new development is required by law to underground their facilities to begin with, and then to tell new development that you've got to take on the excess burden for folks that haven't undergrounded. I don't know, philosophically, maybe I have an objection to that. And as for a public service tax, I don't think that necessarily we need to get into the tax realm. And it probably would be the only other viable one, but at this time, I think we could probably start incrementally biting the elephant with the franchise fee increase, which we have proposed in the last several volleys. We've been at this with Gulf Power for the last 2 years, and the franchise increase was included in one of the volleys, and there were other issues ultimately that decided the franchise was not going to be adopted by Gulf Power and by us, but it's been on the table for over 2 years now. So that's my feeling on it. We're going to continue negotiating with Gulf Power and attempting to find a way to really funnel some money in here. Long-term, TDC is also a viable source so long as we have good folks at the county and good folks on the TDC that represent the city, because it is an investment in infrastructure and tourism, and we're all going to benefit from that, visitors included, by having underground utilities. So there are ways and sources that are outside of this list, including Triumph, and I think all of them need to be pursued, but in the short term, I think the franchise fee may be the one that we end up having to go with, but it's not ripe for a decision at this very moment.
Building on something you just said, one thing that occurred to me, and actually my husband brought it up when I was talking to him, was the folks that already have underground power in their neighborhoods or whatever might have an issue if we go the route of adding it to the electric bills. Well, why am I paying for somebody else? Just something to consider and for us to discuss, because I'm sure that question would come up with folks.
Well, and their underground systems, ultimately, once you get to the border of their properties or their development, is fed by larger they're fed by larger above-ground lines, which we would attempt to underground for their sake as well, because, it doesn't matter if you have underground utilities if the above ground that feeds your entire system goes down. So there's a counter argument to that as well, but I understand there's just going to be general apprehension to it. But if you can earmark it and guarantee that these funds will never be smeared around for other pet projects, that this is always going to be an investment in our future and the betterment of the city, I think you'll get much better buy-in.
And not only that, just when we're talking about the first phase, undergrounding Highway 98, just when people see the aesthetics, not just the hardening, but just how it changes the community from the aesthetic standpoint, the community buy-in's a little bit better, because everybody's, and not only that, but the truth will be known, especially if we accomplish total undergrounding. Everybody's property values goes up. Everybody gets some of their investment back in many ways, not just the hardening, the underground part of it. Skip.
The only thing that I would kind of throw into this mix is that, that's not the only elephant in the room. The other elephant in the room is we're trying to acquire beach access. And that's a multi-million-dollar proposition as well. And so some of this money that we're talking about, if we're going to use it for undergrounding, that's money that we can't use then for beach access. So we need to be real careful on how much of this money we're encumbering for this undergrounding and make sure that we got enough money left over for beach access, so.
I think that was a little bit of the motivation of Bragg's options, is to show us it's not just a one-trick pony on trying to fund undergrounding or beach access. I always thought early in the game, as Parker and Chef were negotiating, that we basically had one main source of funding, and that would be the increase in franchise. After Bragg's presentation, it shows us there's many ways to bite at the apple, and it's the pleasure of the council to decide how to do that. And then we can take in those issues of the beach initiative and some of the other projects. Stormwater runoff, instead of using that for undergrounding, we may actually have some stormwater issues we need to spend the money on. So, but that gives us, at least he gave us multiple options of not just for the undergrounding aspect, but just to kind of show us that, there is monies available out there for us in a variety of ways. And I appreciate that, Mr. Farmer, because that was an education opportunity for myself. I learned something by all the different options. And the good news is the council we have those options are before us, and we get to talk about it and decide which one to implement. Any other discussion? Seeing none?
Mr. Mayor, item 4D is with regard to a resident pass system for beach parking that was approved in November by the council. Council directed staff to bring back some possible ways to provide year-round residents with either free or discounted parking. And Mr. Webwarren is here and has put together some suggestions to accomplish that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Back on November 4th, Council did approve for staff to go ahead and begin the process of implementing a paid parking program south of 98, which is we are referencing as beach parking. And during that process, Council did ask staff to research opportunities to provide a resident pass in some form or fashion, whether that was a discounted program or even potentially a free program. So this agenda item, as you go through it, provides a number of different options. And what staff is recommending after doing research with our paid parking vendor and is something similar to our Henderson Beach Pass program, where basically it would be sticker-based, and that the residents would be verified through the same similar system as our Henderson Beach Pass. And basically what that provides is our residents, our full-time residents, to be able to park in those paid parking areas at either a discounted rate or for free, depending on council's direction on this. So what staff is looking for from council at this point is direction on the resident program, whether it will be discounted or free, so that we can move forward and have this in place for March 1st.
We do have a recommended motion with the two options that Mr. Warren described as either one, discounted rates, or two, free rates for full-time year-round residents.
I'll make a motion. I move that the council adopt a resident beach parking pass program that allows for the free parking on Scenic 98 and Crystal Beach and Crystal Shore Drive and Holiday Isle, and have the program in place by March 1, 2020.
I'll second that.
I got a motion, I got a second. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. Yeah, I support the free parking for our residents, but I still hold to the idea that this is just insult to injury to our already very poor public beach conditions, and now we're going to be asking people to go to our very inadequate beach accesses and, tourists to come down here to the beach and come to our inadequate beach accesses and pay $5. I think it's insulting.
Mr. Braden.
Did we get any input from the Crystal Beach residents on this at all?
I'm sorry, I could not hear you. Could you say that again?
Did we get any input from the homeowners in Crystal Beach about this?
Not to my knowledge,
emails,
not specifically to Crystal Beach.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Marler.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not happy with this at all. Basic reason being that the residents permanent residents should have already have parking on their property. If they're talking about when they have a party or something like that, but I'm trying to figure out how that's going to work, because the whole point was to have the revenue coming in from the Crystal Beach parking area and Holiday Isle. And I know on Holiday Isle that if you live on there and are part of the association, you can get through there. There's other places to park. I can't support it just simply because it's actually being unfair to what we're trying to do with the short-term rentals. If we want the short-term rentals not to park, they need the extra parking spaces. I would expect that the residents that are permanent residents should already have adequate parking and shouldn't need to have a pass to park in our public lots. So, I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. I think we're going to penalize the people that we're trying to get here for tourists, that are trying to do it right. And then I have a feeling that the system will be abused, and I personally believe that it'll be abused, and that's the way I feel about it.
I think that a couple of speakers are kind of missing the point about this. In my opinion, what I've seen, and I've drove along there, what's happening is people that are here on vacation in a place that doesn't have adequate parking, they're going out there and parking their vehicles, and they stay there 24 hours a day for the 3 days or 4 days or 6 days that they're here, and not providing any parking access to our residents and or other visitors that are just here for a day or staying on a property elsewhere outside of Crystal Beach. And so the $5 parking fee would encourage them not to do that. And it would provide more public parking for more public individuals, whether they're residents or tourists that are staying somewhere else that want to get to our inadequate beach access points that we're trying to change and make them more than adequate with our initiative. So we're looking down the road here, and so this is not about providing more parking for free for people that live in Crystal Beach. This is really by charging a fee to prevent vacationers from using this excess parking for free, because they only have 4 parking spots at their week-long rental, and they burn up a parking opportunity for somebody that's just here for the day or for a few hours that want to access the beach. We all know that James Lee Park fills up. Our state park is free for residents. It fills up. So this will do multiple things. It'll provide the city with income to try to look for more parking, provide more parking for our community. It can be applied to the improvements that are going to be needed for our beach accesses once we buy more beach. I mean, there's many reasons to do this, but the fee itself is really got multiple aspects to it. And I think that's the point that you missed, and I think that Mr. Morgan did the same thing. Both of you are saying the truthful things, but I don't think that's the intent of what this parking concept that they're provided.
But Mayor, all due respect, we could do a 5-hour parking limit and still have it be for free, and we could enforce that just as easily as if it were $5. You just enforce it the same way.
That's where I'm coming from. I don't think the residents, I think the residents should do the same, because if we're going to do this resident passes at one end of town, we need to do it at the other end of town too, because of overflow in our other parking lots. There is residences right down the street on the Cybert Avenue parking lots. I'm not against the fees, the $5 that, we already charging in the other parking lots. That's not the problem. I just don't think nothing against the residents themselves, but, that's the whole point of the paid parking. Everybody pays, or else. I'm not against the fee. I'm just against the passes, because I think they're going to end up being abused, in my personal opinion.
All right, before we take it to a vote, I got a couple more folks that like to weigh in. Ms. Ramswell and then Mr. Menschel after that. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thanks. I look at this as another way to benefit our residents. I mean, there's so many ways that our residents are fighting the tourists in different ways. And of course, we love having our tourists here, but we need to reward our residents and show them that they're valuable too. I mean, I like to go to the beach, but where am I going to find a parking space? Or if there is a space, should I pay to go to the parking space that y'all are already getting our taxes? And I mean, I know that's sounds like a little bit of an overkill, but the point being, I think we need to help our residents in any way we can, and this is one way we can do so.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Mitchell.
I like staff just from an application standpoint. If we go with the free pass for residents, is it unlimited parking for the resident? Hour-wise? In other words, how is that enforceable? Realistically.
When you're parked there, you don't pay.
Right, so it's not, I just want to, back to a reality check. You have that. Right, okay, and I'm just saying, we're not going to be able to enforce that because they're not on a clock. Just something to think about.
I'm not following. Can you explain that just so
All
I
right,
see where you're
if
coming from?
somebody, if you pay to park, our code enforcement can go in with an app and see if that car has paid. I take my car out there and I have a pass, I could stay there for 2 days. There's nothing to check how long I've been there.
We check the lots at night.
Well, not overnight, but I'm saying it could be there all day long. I'm not against this, I'm just trying to talk, again, we put a lot of things in place and we don't think it through as far as the enforcement standpoint. Have you thought about that standpoint, about once they have that, how long could they be there? Something to consider would be do the pass some sort of way. I want to help residents. I'm all in favor of this. Do you have an afternoon or an evening? I mean, to do something that it just doesn't get abused. Want to help the residents, but then the tourists say, we never can even pay the $5 because the whole thing's filled with residents. Just something to consider.
Mr. Morgan, you had a comment?
Yeah, just, I mean, I know in Tuscaloosa I get parking tickets because my truck would be there for more than 2 hours, and somebody comes by and sees your truck and documents it there, and 2 hours later it's still there, well, they give you a ticket. So a 5-hour limit, yeah, you can't look on the app, but if a code enforcement officer drives by the parking lot, sees a car there at 1 p.m., and they come back at 7 p.m., well, that's more than 5 hours.
Okay, Mr. Braden?
Is that one sticker per household?
Staff discussed that, and my personal recommendation is I don't think that will work to do one, like with the Henderson Beach, we do one per household, and that's fair. But with families that have generally 2 cars, I don't know how that would be fair to the residents. So it wouldn't hurt us to issue 2 stickers to those households. They would have to document that they live in Destin, and both vehicles would have to be registered at the correct address. And that's our recommendation. Y'all can do it however you feel is right.
Well, we got a motion and we've had a second. We've had a fairly robust discussion, so let's just go ahead and take this to a vote.
But at some point, we do have to clarify the number of passes, right? Okay.
Ayes have it, so moved. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Everybody take a seat. Well, you don't have to sit down, you can stand up. But I do want to call the meeting back to order. Ms. Ramswell?
She had to wait in line for the bathroom like everybody else.
Yeah. My timing was impeccable, wasn't it? All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, Lance, we're on item 4E. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4E is regarding Office Productivity Suite and email systems for Office 365. We have our IT manager, Mr. Matthew Pace, here to walk you through what we're requesting and the motion that we would like for council to offer.
Yeah. And I can start us off here. This is kind of a housekeeping issue. We have expanded our licensing to our board and committees, as well as we have a number of new employees. So what we're looking with this is, because of the amount, is to be able to move forward and with the additional licensing. And again, this is a 3-year contract with our Liftoff company. So this will be the 2nd year of that for our Office 365 licensing.
Apologize. Now we have Mr. Matthew Pace here to answer any questions regarding this software.
Seeing no questions. Oh, I do have a comment. Matt, how can we prevent being spammed all day long on our city email address?
I promise you, I am trying my best. I get about 2,000 to 3,000 spam messages that you don't see, that I see every day. So I understand your frustration, but I will definitely be working really hard to get that taken care of.
I have a strained right thumb from hitting unsubscribe, and they do not unsubscribe. That is a ruse.
I have one comment request, if you would. There's been a couple of times, I'm not an IT person, Webb can certainly tell you that, okay? We've gotten like an alert message, like don't open this because it's harmful. I know that's happened just a couple of times, but we've gotten that alert message after the bad message came in, okay? So it's after the fact, so it serves no purpose. And I know this has only been a couple of times, but if something happens like that, my suggestion is to text us. Because, again, I didn't open it, but it was after the fact. And we've had that several times. And I know it's not that you're not working, you're working, but it's after the fact. So what can we, we have to have a better notification system on those rare occasions.
Yes, and on emails similar to those are actually just phishing messages. They're not harmful to you. You can reply to them and not be harmed in any way. However, I can't see who actually receives the message other than who sends it to me. So what I'd like to do is always alert everybody, even if it's after the fact, to be on the lookout for future emails that are in that regard. So that's one of the reasons for that email that I send out. One of the things that I implement in our security system for our online system is blocking of all malicious files that are sent through our system. We have a very robust system that actually will scan all of our emails before they're sent to you for malicious files. So most of the emails you'll see are just phishing, trying to get information from you or someone else in the organization. So the more that the end user is prepared, that's the #1 goal that I have for most of the people who, like you say you're not as techie. It helps you be better prepared for issues that arise and for future events.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Matt, go ahead. Lance.
There is a recommended motion if someone from council would like to entertain that.
I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I move to approve the continuation of services and addition of Office 365 government licenses with Liftoff and authorize the city manager to purchase the necessary Office 365 licensing for city operations in the amount of $27,708, which is a cost increase of $8,028 due to licenses being provided to city committee members and new positions created in 2020.
I have a motion.
I'll second it, Mayor.
I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none? Votes unanimous, so moved. Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4F is regarding Verizon Wireless GSA supply authorization, and Mr. Warren is here to kick this item off. We are looking for a recommended motion.
Again, this is kind of a housekeeping issue. We have a state contract with Verizon for all our mobile technology. We are expanding the number of units that we will due to a number of new employees as well as some phones for council. We are expanding those numbers and we need the authorization from council to move forward with that. The cost is in the item, and so we're just looking for the motion so that we can move forward and distribute these funds.
I'll entertain a motion at this point.
I'll make that motion. I move to approve the Verizon Wireless GSA supply authorization and authorize the city manager to execute the document accordingly.
I have a motion.
I'll second again.
And I have a second. Is there any discussion on this item?
I think I had a question. I'm
Go ahead,
trying to-
ma'am.
Go ahead, because I can't find it, so it must not have been that important.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and take it to a vote then. Vote is unanimous, so moved. Mr. Johnson.
Item 4G, the sub-award agreement number 2020-R14 between Okaloosa County and the City of Destin regarding Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park and Plaza project and the RFP required to accomplish that project. The RFP is attached to this item for council's review at council's request at a previous meeting. Staff is looking for council's approval for us to issue or publish the RFP after it is reviewed by the land use attorney and Okaloosa County's review as required by their contract. We're also looking for a motion to authorize the mayor to execute the sub-award agreement so that we can actually hopefully break ground and start building this park after almost 16 years.
I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make the motion, but I do have discussion. I move that Destin City Council authorize Mayor Gary Jarvis to execute the sub-award agreement number 2020-R14 between Okaloosa County, Florida and the City of Destin, Florida, pertaining to the direct component portion of the Restore Act Trust Fund monies allocated to Okaloosa County.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Ms. Ramswell.
So I had a couple questions, and I had sent a note to Mr. Farmer and Mr. Johnson. Over the years, we've heard so many different amounts of the park cost this, and we spent this much for that and this, and I was trying to get some sort of spreadsheet or something that would show us what monies have come in, what have been allocated, what has been sent, just so we can kind of see where things are. Because something that I've noticed and I have not seen really in anything that has come to us is that several different properties through the years, as part of their NPPB or their NPEB, had monies donated to the city specifically for this project. Including one of them, for example, was $500,000 for the Point One project. So I'm just wondering where those particular funds, there are 3 of them that I have found, where those fit in to the expenditures and the income, et cetera.
Actually, I kind of completed a quick analysis of this afternoon. You know, we spent about $4.6 million just on the land. And that was paid through about 2 or 3 different sources of funding. Part of it, a bond fund and some CRA funds and whatnot. But that is paid in full. To date, we have allocated recreation impact fees, and we will send this out to y'all so that you have it tomorrow. We sent out recreation impact fees of about $70,000. Road impact fees of $125,000, CRA loan funds of $42,500, and then of course we have the grant of $1.216 million, as well as some NPEB funds of $46,000 for just about $1.5 million total allocated for the park's construction. Of that, we've spent about $210,000 on the engineering drawings and whatnot. So we have about just a little short of $1.3 million currently allocated for the construction of the park.
So I know that there was $46,000 that came from Waterview Towers, and there was $46,800 that came from Grand Harbor. I heard you mention, I think, the 46 one. What about the 46A?
To be honest, I know of no funds that have been donated to the city for the specific purpose of building the park. Now, there may have been funds that have been donated to the city, There may be fees, MPEB fees, that have been paid to the city because of their construction of docks along the harbor, but that doesn't mean those funds are specifically to be used in the park. So
In this case, it was in all three of them because it was done through the Board of Trustees, specifically earmarked for Heritage Park and Plaza.
Okay, well, I did not know that.
And then the $500,000 one that came from Point One, I'm not sure if that got lost in the limbo, like the road and the bathrooms they were supposed to build, or do you know anything about that $500,000 that was supposed to be for the park as well as the boardwalk, and it was done 1/19/2011?
Was that actually paid to the city, or was
That's
that?
what I'm asking you. I don't know.
No, I don't believe that money, I don't think Point One ever went vertical, correct?
Well, they didn't, well, and see, that's the thing, is I don't know whether they pay it as soon as they're approved, and I don't know the process, but I do know that those were supposedly, or definitely earmarked for this project.
That may be earmarked in their agreement with the city as they move forward to a CO, but I don't think those funds were ever provided to the city.
Maybe that's something we should check on. Who would is that something I would discuss with the land use attorney, or I'm not sure who the proper?
We can discuss it.
Okay, because that was earmarked, and that's, again, I'm not trying to be piddly here, but with all the money coming back and forth, it's kind of hard to keep track of what's gone where, and particularly when we've had so many changes. And I know in 2013, they actually had to reduce what they were going to do because they thought we weren't ever going to build it. And we know we kind of came back from that. But I did want to, I'm very interested in seeing what you've put together so we can kind of look at it and see where everything's gone and things that maybe we should have, make sure we obtain if we have not already.
And those two other MPEB funding, if I could, maybe after the meeting, I can get those from you so I can kind of follow up on that with you.
Mr. Mitchell.
I just have a question. Throughout this thing, I know our portion of the payment is $33,470. My question is, how did that figure come about? I'm just not familiar with the background. I was just curious how it was determined we pay that portion, that dollar value.
When you say our portion of what?
Under Article 2, the county, it talks about the amount of money that's going to be spent, and that the sub, which is us, is going to put in the money, $33,000.
Oh, is that the 12.5%? Because normally when you get federal funding, they'll pay 75%, the county will pay 12.5%, and we'll pay 12.5%.
Okay, I was just trying to understand the formula. Thank you.
That's their basic formula.
Thank you.
All right, well, at this point, you're looking for a motion, correct? I'll entertain a motion. That's right, we had a second. Any further discussion is my next question. Seeing none? Vote is unanimous, so moved.
And a follow-up motion on that item, Mr. Mayor, was with regards to the RFP going out, the council's approval for me to send that out.
I'll entertain that motion. Got it?
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none?
Lance, when do we expect to have that thing out, if we approve tonight?
The only thing that we have to do is Ms. Kopp has to review it, and then the county attorney has to review it, and then we can send it out.
Vote is unanimous, so moved. Item H.
Item 4H is Development Review System Software Update, and we have Mr. Warren here to do that update.
Yes, on August 5th, council requested that staff provided a regular update on on the municipal software project. Again, staff continues to move forward on this. I can't thank our leaders who are all here tonight, as well as our staff. They have been working hard on this project. The last meeting directly with Intergov, I believe, was December 10th through the 12th. It was very successful, very exhausting sessions, but very productive sessions. Our next meetings will be on January 14th through the 16th with Intergov staff, and we continue to look at our processes and adapting them to the software. We are on target as it relates to Intergov's and staff's timeline that was established at the very beginning of this project, and if council has any questions, we are more than happy to answer them.
Item 4I is a request for direction from the council on amendments to the short-term rental ordinance. Council had requested that staff bring back the STR task force recommendations in a more friendly, user-friendly list. Staff has bulleted those items 1 through 9 and is looking for a motion to approve all or some or none of those recommendations.
I'll go if no one else is going to go. So the only item that I really have a problem with is item 4, and that is the one that requires that the agent contact their guests the day prior to trash pickup and advise them of the time trash needs to be placed. In my opinion, I mean, putting it on the sheet when they check in and notifying them should be sufficient. And if that doesn't work, well, the onus is then on the owner or the rental agent to go make it right and do it themselves if they have to. But to tell someone they got to pick up the phone and call or email or go to the house, that to me is just an extra step that personally I don't think that we need to ask them to go to.
Okay, I agree with Preble on item 4 being unnecessary. If they want to go ahead and do it, I mean, I think some of the companies already send them like an email or a text or whatever. If they want to do that, that's fine, but I don't think they should be required to do that. As far as requiring each property to have 1 trash can for every 6 occupants, I think if they've been given a notice of violation by Joey and his folks, then yeah, that's true. Then they should be required to have 1 for every 6 residents. But if their trash cans are never overfilled, there's no reason for them to have extra trash cans just sitting around that they don't need. And requiring the registration of for the parking passes, I think we've discussed that and already talked that that's not necessary. If it's on the sign how many parking spots they're authorized. If they're authorized 6, and if there's 6 vehicles there, then everything's fine. If there's 7 or 8 or 10 or 20, then Joey and his folks will give them a notice of violation, and so I mean that's a no-brainer. I don't know, they're not going to go up and look on each car and see if each car's got a sticker on it. So I don't think that's necessary. So I would say 2, 4, and 6 are not necessary. And I think, like Ken said before, the only thing they're not even really asking for any of this stuff.
Mr. Mitchell.
I'm going to address items recommended 6 as well, as far as that parking pass. I think we've beat that in the ground. Again, this is another one of those, why have a rule we can't enforce? We can't trespass on our land to check it out, number one. What happens if somebody just comes over for a couple of hours and they're not spending the night? They wouldn't have a decal on their thing. The only way one of those parking passes work, they work in hotels, they work in condos and places like that, where security has access to the whole building. But to walk, so I'm totally against number 6, and I'll just stop at that for now.
Thank you, sir. My only comment on the trash cans, I think the STR's task force intent was good. I spent a little time talking with Waste Management. I asked how they're addressing some of the trash issues that happen in Walton County. And what they come up with is a valet trash pickup. And it's something I think that we as a city ought to look into before we burden these individual property owners who are already paying their way. Maybe it's a tab that we pick up with the city. I'm going to have a meeting with Ronnie Bell this week, and so I would, if anything, just ask the council ignore the trash can issue at this point. We can always readdress it until I can get some hard numbers of what it would actually cost. But it would make Joey's job a hell of a lot easier, and it would, you know, when I say valet trash pickup, they actually have a golf cart that comes, the guys wheel the trash out to the road, their crew picks it up, and they put the trash cans back. And it's a very nominal cost, and I think it's one that it would free up our code enforcement people so much to where they could take their monies they're being paid to address some of the more serious issues in our community. And so on that particular point, out of these recommendations, I'd hope that we'd hold off on making any additional requirements to the property owners and the management companies when it comes to those trash cans until we can take a good hard look at doing perhaps a valet trash pickup service that would be part of our agreement with Waste Management as far as the city's concerned. Mr. Mr. Braden, you're up first.
If I'm not mistaken, that was Waste Management's recommendation was 1 can.
Initially, it was one of theirs, but when I talked with Ronnie, we took a different approach. And so they're putting together some numbers just so I can present them to y'all just for the consideration of the council. That was just in the heat of, not the heat of the moment, but in that particular meeting, they were looking for options, and that's one that Ronnie presented them at that time. But then when we got talking, and what spurred our conversation with Mr. Bell was one of the people came up in public testimony, one of the property owners, and said, you know, I don't really need to buy another trash can, you know, because we're doing everything right. And so I was just trying to find another viable option that could solve the problem more effectively, more efficiently, and most importantly, in a cost-effective way. So that's the only reason I'm asking the council on that particular issue not to put it or approve it in the ordinance at this time. Okay? Mr. Mitchell.
I move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance incorporating the following recommendations of the short-term rental. Items number 3 and 9, which are the 2 items Mr. Wappler talked about. Recommendation 3 is the maximum increase on parking, and number 9 is the last day of February. It's my motion.
So I got a motion and I got a second. Right now I got Mr. Marlar and then Mr. Dessett. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Okay. I have to ask this Joey a question here. Have we exhausted everything that we can already do? Like the gentleman said earlier, let Joey do his job without having to approve any of these extra things until we see if we've got everything we can already do.
I can tell you that we're just getting ready to hire your evening shift. I believe that you're going to see a difference with a new process that I put in place for my officers to go out there with a new citation issuing. And with your evening shift, we're going to be able to educate them faster. We're going to be able to get the word out there a lot quicker to the management companies, responsible parties, and your homeowners. Because we're going to be going towards the homeowners, not so much the management.
Okay. One further thing. When the livery stuff come up earlier, we're making it impossible. I think a lot of what we're doing here is we're actually making it impossible to have a good tourist industry. I realize we have parking issues. I'll be bringing that up later. I realize we've got a lot of different issues out there, but that short-term rentals is part of our bed tax, the bed tax that we keep tapping for other things. And so it's going to turn around eventually where nobody's going to want to come to Destin because you know, we're too restrictive. I mean, how restrictive, how much government do we need to be involved in over here? You know, that's our main problem right now.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Steve, thank you for making that motion. I tend to echo the sentiments that that Mr. Overdyer and Mr. Wampler expressed, so I'll go ahead, I'll support that motion tonight for 3 and 9.
All right, we've had a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. Is there anyone else want to add anything?
I'd like to hear, I know we've got several members of the task force here, and if they can shed any light on some of the trash situation or anything else you feel might be pertinent for us to know.
Mayor, so the motion is only just approved 3 and 9, just two items out of the 9.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. That was the motion I was hoping you'd make, and I was hoping that the council approve. The only thing I'd add to your discussion on the trash is, for the mayor's benefit, there's a number of companies that already use a valet service for trash already. So that's already in place, which is probably where the majority of the rule followers are going. As we've talked about, if we deal with the habitual offenders by enforcing the current ordinance, those problems with Joey's extra staff, it'll fix it. And so those 2 items that the motion is asking you to approve today is what we would support you to do.
Thanks, sir.
Trash stinks, by the way. No.
All right, we'll take it to vote. See no further comment.
I know, I'm just looking at these other ones that we're not including. Sorry,
That's
just
all right.
making sure I'm
Take-
sure of what I'm doing here. You making fun of me again down there?
Hey, at least I'm not doing that music that na 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 na. na. Eyes have it, so moved.
Item 4J is the regular update on the Airport Road Guardrail project, and we have Mr. Burgess here to give us that update.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Mayor, Council. This evening, the update for Airport Road includes basically 2 items. It's a reiteration of an email I received from Michael Lewis, FDOT's District 3 safety engineer, about their timeline for design and construction for the high-friction surface treatment and other improvements for the Airport Road curve. And in addition, just to let you all know that we're going to be meeting with Volkert Wednesday morning to discuss the guardrail design as well as another project.
Ramswell.
Okay, so I have a few questions. Didn't we already have in place some designs for guardrails that were drawn up previously for previous council requests?
Not to my knowledge. We just got a quote for the design work.
Okay, and then so they're talking about the FDOT design, the design complete by June 30th. So they're saying it's going to be 6 months to come up with the design?
Let me jump in real quick. We're talking about 2 different projects. One is our local project regarding the guardrail installation, which is the temporary project that council voted on. And then we're talking about the FDOT project, and that's the one with the dates.
Fantastic. That I was going to blow a gasket if they're going to take 6 months for a frickin' guardrail, pardon me. All right, great. So with the guardrail, do we have an estimated date of delivery, so to speak, for the guardrail?
Yeah, when I spoke to Mr. Warnke earlier, he just said it would be a few weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, I believe he said.
Before it's in place, or they come back to us with some other idea?
Council authorized the city manager to begin kind of the negotiation process with Volker. We will get a lot of that ironed out Wednesday morning.
Okay, it's just my concern. Clearly, we didn't want this to be super complicated. We just wanted to get something preventative to help with the situation, but I don't want to see this lingering into April, May, June, and then here we are. So anything y'all can do to continue to speed this along is very helpful. Thank you for your efforts.
Any other comments? Yeah, I got it. Go ahead.
what happens when a moving object hits a non-moving object? And that's where I think we're going to end up going. I cannot, in my right conscience, approve guardrails because I see more disaster ahead. We need to figure out a way to slow down traffic on that road, because I can tell you how fast you can take it without any incidents, and that's 40 miles an hour. If the speed limit's 35, if people would go 35 or 25 when they go that curve, we won't need the guardrails, I guarantee you. So I'm still opposed to this.
But they're not, so it's incumbent on us to try to make it safer for those that don't.
All right. We don't need a motion here. You're just giving us an update, correct? All right.
One item I'd like to bring up that was not on my list of items was the staff is looking for a little extra direction on a request made by council to look at the possibility of leasing property on the south, get my directions right, southwest side of the Marlar Bridge. That was brought up at the last meeting. And we just need some clarification because we've had some folks from the Air Force reach out to us and we'd like to be able to answer their questions better. And Ms. Kopp actually had some conversations with that gentleman.
Yeah, they are basically wanting to know our intent as far as whether we are looking to potentially lease that property with them or if we would be interested in a license with them. They have indicated they're looking at options from other entities. I'm not sure who, but they wanted to know if the city wanted to be included or not. As far as a lease, it's probably something that's on the expensive side because they will ask for fair market value. But a license may or may not be something that you want to consider. If we went that route, the city would take on responsibility for maintenance of the property.
Mr. Mitchell?
Can Louis or Kim, can you come back to us with some ideas on some suggestions? I think, here we are saying we want to do it, but I think we need to get the expertise from you on what our options are.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, some of the things there were things we initially discussed, but if you want us to come back with a staff report.
If Louis has some ideas or something like that from a planning standpoint. Obviously, I know this is separate and apart, but we also have the sign there that, from another situation that's going to be spruced up and beefed up. That's a work in progress as well. So it'd be interesting to see some suggestions from you.
Certainly, we can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think our discussion at our last meetings were basically we were throwing up against the wall and see what sticked. It was a general off-the-cuff idea to look into it. It wasn't very well thought out, for sure.
You all got their attention, so they're interested in what
Yeah,
we're
because I think
interested
it made the paper, correct? Okay, so Mr. Destin.
Yeah, and it did make the paper, and I can't tell that the general public is really thrilled at the idea of us expanding our jurisdictional reach, at least at first blush, because I don't think it was necessarily spelled out what the city's intent would be over there. So unfortunately, without more to go on, the general public will fill in the blanks with usually some negative stuff, talking about how, there's going to be another Emerald Grand over on the other side of the bridge. Destin screwed up everything in their city. Now they want to keep spreading out. So I think it's important to at least, if this discussion is going to continue, to try to put in some guardrails with regards to what is the policy goal we intend to effectuate. So if the goal is to basically assist the Air Force in basically resurfacing the lot, putting public facilities for like bathrooms over there. Basically, the goal for the city is to ensure that area is always held for public use in perpetuity, but in a manner that is better than the way it is right now, because the Air Force is in over its head. It doesn't have a code enforcement arm. It does not have the ability or the funds to start throwing bathroom facilities out there, which they desperately need because thousands of people use it every day, and there are no bathrooms. They are going somewhere. They're going somewhere, and it's not going in a toilet or the water treatment facility. So if the Air Force is in fact not going to step into the void to try to, at least from a public health safety standpoint, then the city could be encouraged, because the city is looking for more opportunities for recreation and public beach access. But I don't think that necessarily we should do it alone. I think that if we're going to pursue this, we need to probably walk in hand with some of our other local governmental entity partners. And what I'm talking about here is, to my end, I'm this council's representation on the TDC. We have Mr. Wampler, who's the chairman here. I think it's worth having a conversation at a future TDC meeting to find out what interest the county or the TDC has in trying to step in and alleviate what is some of the longer-term chronic issues we're having over there. Primarily, there are no bathrooms. It would behoove us, and there are no lifeguards, and we know that the use is just going up every single year. There's no trash collection to speak of. We've seen it blown around all over, and we just know that as it stands today, the Air Force and the National Park Service doesn't appear to have the resources to deal with it. So if we move forward, I think it's best that we try to engage our other community partners, and I'm more than happy if given the instruction from the council to at least start a discussion at the TDC level.
I think we do that with just a head nod as far as that's concerned.
Something else to consider. We've talked about this several times. People entering Destin, okay, that's our front door, if you will. Okay, and if we take that on and beautify that, that's our front door. Again, we've talked about the Mid-Bay Bridge, putting signage there. That's been a work for years, and it's still in limbo. It's nice to let people know, hey, you're entering Destin. If we take control in that with a partnership, whoever, it's certainly going to be a lot more eye appeal to everybody and a welcome to Destin.
Mr. Braden.
I agree. You ask 1,000 out of 1,000 tourists, they're going to tell you that's Destin, because we have a huge sign over it that says Destin. And it was frightening to me when I took my family over there this past summer, and I don't know how many needles we come across, from drug use over there. So that was when I brought it up at the last council meeting, that was my intention, is try to get it, and like Parker said, put some bathrooms over and clean it up and maintain it, and that's our front door, and make it proud for everybody. And I agree that, let's reach out and see if we can't get some help with it, whether it be lease it, if it's expensive, or how, or.
Well, I think that's what you guys were looking for, and through the discussions here, you should have a clear idea of the intent of that comment that Mr. Braden made at our last meeting.
Yes, thank you for the clarity.
Okay, guys, go ahead.
Just have a few announcements. Number one is in an effort to improve communications, which is on the City of Destin strategic plan chart. Staff is going to cease sending out the Friday weekly report that you're used to seeing, and instead send out a weekly task tracking update form, which should be tracking the requests that were coming specifically from council and the status. They may not be done, but we're going to tell you where we're at with them. So that's an attempt on our part to keep you up to date on where we're at, whether it's good or not. We're going to tell you where we're at, so you know exactly where we're at in the process. And to replace the weekly report that we have been doing for years and years, we're going to switch that over to a monthly report, which I think is going to be a much better use of staff's time. Each department then will have basically their own chapter to fill in on that report. It should be a little bit more substantial than what you're used to seeing in a weekly report, and more meaningful. And plus, those chapters can be pulled out and distributed for individual departmental use, such as the Community Development Department. And I know theirs will probably be the largest chapter in that report for sure. So that's our plan in the 2020 going forward, to try to address one of the items on the strategic plan. Just a note that on January the 20th, which would normally be our next council meeting, that's Martin Luther King's birthday, so we will meet the Tuesday following that. Did I get that date correct? Thank you. So our next meeting will be on Tuesday, not Monday. And then on January 30th, we have scheduled social media and public records training for both council and members of the public that would like to attend, that will be held at City Hall, and we do ask that members of the public that would like to participate RSVP to Catherine so that we can get a count, because we do have limited space in that room available. And that is all I have tonight, sir.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on. There's no public hearings tonight, so we're going to move on to item 6, consent agenda. We pulled item C for discussion, so I'll entertain a motion for approval of A, B, and D.
Mayor, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
To approve A, B, and D.
Okay, I've got a motion. I have a second. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved. Ms. Ramswell, you pulled C for discussion. Do you want Lance to start with that, or do you want to go ahead and make the comment?
Sure, feel free. I like the status report and giving us an update, so go for it.
I appreciate you pulling this item off. I thought that I had checked this agenda with a fine-tooth comb, but going back over it, there was a blank in the motion, which makes it hard to make a motion on a consent agenda item, because there were two choices. And that's what I'm reaching out to council for, is a choice to fill in that blank. There are two types of seawalls that we can use in this application. One being vinyl, which is what the bid committee has recommended. The other being aluminum, which is what was at Clement Taylor Park and is also what FEMA recommended. Both are very good products. Personally, I prefer the aluminum, but it is a council decision which way. FEMA will reimburse no matter which direction we go. The aluminum does cost a little bit more, and they feel will mitigate future damage better.
Can somebody who is expert in this sort of engineering, I don't know, Rodney, maybe you, it would seem like anything that's going to be near the water, aluminum would rust and corrode. Vinyl would not, but perhaps that's faulty logic. Can someone elaborate on that?
Aluminum doesn't rust.
Aluminum doesn't.
It oxidizes over time, but even in salt water, it's greatly reduced. In fact, it can oxidize greater in just open air versus in salt water. We have airplane wrecks that we fish that are World War I and World War II airplane wrecks, and when you dive them, they're still pretty intact the day that they crashed. So that's why the aluminum is a superior product strength-wise over the vinyl. The vinyl may have a little bit longer overall shelf life, but we're putting them there to kind of hold back the waves and the storm. So
what about, and I think of metal, aluminum, if you will, and I think of people being able to get sliced by it and not by vinyl. Is any part of it going to be exposed?
Both of these systems have a cap that prevent that from happening.
That's why I'm asking these questions. So those are my only questions in regard to the actual seawall. I have some additional questions about the park in general, so I can hold off on that if we want to go ahead and do some sort of motion on
What is the price difference?
Give me just a second. The vinyl sheets total price estimate was $210,752, and this is all going to be reimbursed by FEMA. The aluminum estimated price $232,852.
it is a flip of the coin. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Which one handles impacts better from, let's say, vessels or debris?
The vinyl will crack and break, and the aluminum tends to bend. That's just fact. Okay.
I'll go ahead and make the motion for aluminum.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second, any discussion? Ayes have it, so moved. That is unless it's an RPG or a missile hits it. Correctamundo. All right.
So the additional questions I have on this topic actually relate to the park as a whole. I know we'd had conversations, I don't even know how long ago, it's been months, where there was some discussion about the possibility of a fire station going on the park property, and it was going to come back to us, and I haven't seen anything, and I just wanted to make sure that things hadn't progressed and we were unaware, or it had gotten lost in the shuffle. I just wanted to find out when that item might come back to us for discussion.
Nothing has developed since the last time that item was brought to council, where we carved a corner of the park out for other uses and got permission from Treasury to do that without impacting our grant. So we can check with the fire department as far as what timetable they would like to see the next step happen on.
So with the Treasury, refresh my memory. I know you had asked specifically about different uses, but did you specifically ask about being used as a fire station? Or whoever actually spoke with them?
We specifically asked if carving that section of the property out for another use would impact our grant, and they said no.
Okay, so then it sounds like it doesn't matter what the use might be. We can open a strip club in the corner. Obviously, I'm joking, touchy subject. Yes. Okay, well, I just wanted to find out because we hadn't had anything come back to us, and I just wanted to make sure we did get that information at some point so we could discuss it and move forward with whatever plans we approve. Thanks.
Probably you, the Mayor Pro Tem, you can move the meeting forward if you want.
Can move the meeting forward. Okay, so moving forward then, comments, presentation, oh no, we don't. Yeah, we do. Comments, presentations from Mayor, Council, Land Use, and City Attorney. Councilman Braden, you're up.
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
So it's back to me, and I do have things tonight. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to visit was I had brought up, and I believe Mr. Overdeer brought up a similar idea, sort of a different element or angle of having a beach advisory committee formed to kind of discuss the different laws and regulations, how we can all come together and have a consensus, et cetera. What is the status of that? Because the last thing I saw was on November 4th, it was going to come back on the 18th, and it did not.
I saw that item on the task list that I had just mentioned to you all today and mentioned it to the senior leaders. We need to bring you the next step for that because it has not been determined, and I apologize. I mean, with the holidays and everything, I'm not going to make any excuses. We just haven't got there yet, but it has not dropped off the radar because it is on that new list that we were talking about earlier.
I would ask that we hurry it along rapidly because we're already in January. The season's going to be upon us, and I'd like to have some sort of consensus established before we enter peak season. So that would be terrific if we can get into that. I have a question, and I'm not sure if this is land use attorney or city attorney, whomever. Do we allow water taxi stops at private property? Can we essentially put them anywhere we want and it's not a problem?
Well, no, nobody can come on our property.
Are you asking about private taxis on private property?
No, just if a private property owner had a sign out in the front that said water taxi stop.
No, they'll have to come to the city to get permit to doing that.
Have a water taxi stop over at Noriega Point, right where we're getting ready to put the road?
I'm not aware of that, no. Where?
There's a sign there that I found today when I was looking through DEP permits. Mr. Warren, I actually emailed you that sign. I don't know if it's somewhere where it could go up on the screen, but I was just concerned because I wasn't aware that we would allow like a business sign for a water taxi on private property, and I didn't know that we had one personally, so.
Yeah, we will have code compliance look into that.
wherever this location is on the point, and it's right, that sign on that pole says water taxi, and it's got a phone number on it. It's 2 years, apparently it's been there 2 years, so. I just noticed it. You'll see the date in the corner. It was part of a permit package that I came across. So if that's something y'all can look into.
Yeah, certainly will do.
Okay. Status of audit. I actually spoke with Mr. Bauman on the phone about that, so I'll skip over that. My last question today, before I get to actually the important business, is Sterling Shores access. There was an issue about a year ago where we discovered that that access had been closed by that property owner, and it was not supposed to be. And it was, I believe Steve Schmidt at the time was going to work with them to get it reopened. I don't recall the outcome of that. Does anyone know?
There was some correspondence between the city attorneys and Mr. Matthews' law firm, who represented the private property owner. And we can probably talk about it further after the meeting if you'd like, but there's been no real movement on it since those correspondence.
But that is a City of Destin deeded beach access point.
Yes.
And they've closed it.
Well, it's not a deeded access point. It's a little more complicated than that. There's some plat issues involved that we can talk about.
Okay, we can talk about it, and then I might
You
request
can
to
bring it
have
up
it on
again
an
if you would
agenda
like.
in the future.
Yes, if you would like to.
Okay, and then the important business of the evening is the nomination or the requested nomination of Mr. Matthew Sweetser for an appointment to the Town Center CRA Advisory Committee, and Mr. Sweetser is here today.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second? Mr. Destin?
Mr. Sweetser has done a great job on the Parks and Rec Committee, and he's from a very old Destin family, the Maltesos. I'm proud to support this one.
Got it. Seeing no further discussion, let's vote on that. It's what happens when you volunteer.
Welcome
So moved.
aboard. And with that, I have nothing further this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, Mr. Mitchell.
Well, I hope everybody had a happy new year. You know, Tuffy Dixon sat in this seat, and his crusade was derelict vessels. And I guess my crusade is contracts and issues with that. At the last council meeting, I asked the city manager how much money approximately that we were owed in an APT contract. And his answer was $1,500, approximately $1,500. Well,
It was less, I said it was less than 15.
Okay, less than 15.
That's what I
Okay.
was told.
Okay, my mistake, less than 15. I took, as you all know, on October 31st, Mr. Pete and Paul sent a email to Mr. Burgess acknowledging several deficiencies and discussing different things. And it included a chart. The chart had blue letters, blue labels, and yellow labels. The blue were items that hadn't been done this year that we still had time, last year, 2019. And the yellow were items that Mr. Pete and Paul had identified that had not been done. So, and that we had paid for. So I took a simple map, the charge sheet, what we pay per item, it's kind of an a la carte thing, for example, security monitoring and all. And just, I could only identify cost in four of the seven lines on the chart. And that totals $3,340. Okay, that's per the city's own paperwork. Okay, so it's certainly more than $1,500. This is based on our own paperwork. That's number one. I'm going to stop for just a second because I'm going to ask our city attorney. I had a meeting with the city attorney prior to this to discuss the audit, which I'm going to discuss more about that in a minute. He brought up the fact, and I'll let him speak, but he said that he's got some, first of all, it's been 7 weeks tonight that we voted to start an audit. It's been 7 weeks. The city attorney mentioned to me that several council members were concerned about this becoming a personnel issue and other things, and I'll let Kyle take it, and then I'll pick it up from there. Please.
Yes, one of the issues that I am requesting clarification on from council tonight is whether, within the scope of the motion, personnel investigations were also contemplated. The scope of the motion was, hang on a second, let me read it to you. City Council instructed the city attorney and city land use attorney to investigate the city's continuing service contracts for any irregularities, clarify the APT contract, and seek out a third-party auditor to conduct a forensic audit of the continuing services contracts. There has been some questions that have arisen regarding certain personnel that may not be here at the city any longer, and I'm not sure whether the scope of what I was directed to do includes the investigation of those matters, or whether I am simply supposed to stick to an investigation and analysis of these contracts and present that written report to council, and then await further instruction from council based on the findings that are presented in that report.
Okay, moving forward, and then we'll certainly address that. I find it appalling that for over 90 days, the city of Destin has known that we're owed money and we haven't asked for that money. Have we not, have we asked, let me just say it another way. Have we asked for the money back from APT?
I don't know that APT has overcharged us yet. If I had that information, I would have absolutely asked for it back.
Okay. How do we not know that we, I mean, in this much time, we haven't been able to figure this out?
I have asked Mr. Farmer to do an independent audit, and the council had directed the attorneys to do a separate audit. I was waiting for the information from that audit to form my final opinion.
Steve, I want to ask you a question right now. Could you ask these same questions to our city manager individually, privately? Or
I have.
Did you?
I have.
And so when he went off the cuff and said he thought the cost was $1,500 and you found out it was $3,340, did you go back to our city manager?
No, he hadn't been available. He's been out. He was on leave.
Because you know, he's the guy that is responsible, and you've got these questions, and it seems to me that this is a discussion that you and him should have in private. And then if you don't get the acceptable answer, then maybe you do it publicly here. I don't know if you're trying to embarrass him or our staff or make the city look bad.
I'm not trying to embarrass anybody.
Because it seems like these are questions that are legitimate, totally legitimate, what you're asking and doing and what is your crusade at this point. But there's the right way and the wrong way. And you would understand it being a lifelong FBI director that there's always a chain of command. And you usually use that chain of command in the process. And it just seems, you know, it's just rubbing me wrong right here, this discussion, because it seems like your job is not to find out the truth right here. It's almost to browbeat our staff. And you're allowed to do that, but I think there's a way to do it. And it just doesn't seem, this is not seemly to me. And I'm just going to step in the gap here and just tell you that I just don't think you're legitimate in what you're searching for, because you're trying to find out if we've been violated or, you know, we've been there's fraud involved or intent or malicious malfeasance and or just plain dereliction of duty, and that's fine. But I don't think this is the time or the place, or at least the chain of command to do it. And that's all.
Okay, well, now let me just first start by answering, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. Don't assume anything, because you don't know if I've had a meeting. So for you to opine like that and say, why didn't you do that? I've had several closed doors with the city manager on a variety of issues. And I told him the last time, this is the last time I'm coming in here privately. I've given him lots of times to take corrective action on a host of things, and they haven't been done. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. Everybody wants to know I'm not on any crusade. I'm not job hunting. I'm not looking to do anything. I'm looking to do my job. I'll point out that every single council member up here had these audits, and nobody found these things because it was just going to be rubber stamped. I don't care if it's 2 cents or 5 cents or $5 million. The fact of the matter is we have a systemic problem. It didn't just start with these things. Historically, we can go back. Several years ago with Gulf Power, we can go back. We can go back to a FEMA grant that we were overpaid $18,000 and had to give a refund to. There's all kinds of financial issues here. It's not just any one thing. So for us to sit here and say, we don't know, or we don't know that, we've known about this for a long time. More troubling, okay, and it's depressing, and Dr. Ramswell showed you that sheet. There appears to be first of all, we have a lot of hard-working staff. By and large, most of our staff work overboard. They do a fantastic job. But it appears there's some staff members that don't have the city manager in their best interest. If they would, you wouldn't have a document like this with this many mistakes coming out here. This is embarrassing. This is embarrassing for the city manager. And we could go on and on and on. And it appears that some people that are supposed to do their job to help the city manager aren't doing it. And we keep kicking the can down the road, we keep kicking it down the road, and on and on and on. And all we keep getting, whether it's this, or whether it's Airport Road guardrail, or whatever it is, everything is an excuse, or everything is misinformation. Let me stand corrected, not everything, many things, okay? This is not meant for an embarrassment or anything. When we make the statement, oh, well, we've been doing it like that for 9 years, what difference does it make if we pay for the pest control in a building that we shouldn't have? When we have to ask about contracts, the sheriff's office doesn't have a generator, but yet it's on there. It's not any one contract. Our contract oversight has been a failure, okay? And we can do everything we want to correct the problems down the line, but as I've said, we've put everything in place, we've got policies in place to make it happen in the future, but the cattle are out and we haven't collected the cattle.
The problem with that statement is, though, the policies are put in place and you're not giving the people the time to do it without trying to throw them under the bus in a public forum, and that's what rubs me wrong.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion.
And that's exactly my opinion, and I share it with you.
At any rate.
And you have the floor, by the way.
Moving forward, well, thank you. Moving forward, we just want to get this corrected and move forward. So we have to ask the question, okay, because it hadn't been answered. As far as a motion moving forward, our attorney has asked and said he needs guidance. He wants to know. We're not looking, okay, it's not a personnel issue. If you review these things and you happen to find an error, it doesn't matter what the name is. It's Jones, Frank, and there may not be any errors. So it's not a targeted personnel issue. It's a review of the thing. The last comment that the attorney and I had, Mayor, for your information, when you review just the contracts without any knowledge, you wouldn't know what you're looking at to be true. As an example, if you're looking at a contract for the generator company and we're supposed to have the contract says 8 generators and only 6 of them are working, on paper it would look right. But without that knowledge that the other 2 aren't working, you wouldn't know. So there's just different methodologies here that have to be identified. And we still have to answer what the attorney's questions are.
I want to figure out the way to best conduct this continuing services audit in a way that guarantees that we do not spend, is there, and I'm working with you, Steve, here, what's the best way? Because I do hear your point. What you're saying is if it means going and counting generators or counting copying machines or figuring out what we've got versus what they're billing us for, these guys bill at $150, $200 an hour. So there's got to be a more economic way to conduct this audit in conjunction with staff to be able to root out exactly what we've got and what we don't. And I'm with you, but how do we pull it off?
Didn't you suggest if we went to Representative Ponder and he requested an audit?
Yes.
That it's free to the city and it's thorough?
Correct.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we don't have anything to hide. I don't have anything to hide.
And the other thing is here, there's more good than bad. Everything in these contracts isn't wrong, and everybody hasn't done anything wrong. We don't know what we don't know, and it has to be reviewed. Unfortunately, tonight is 7 weeks into this, and we're basically no further along than we were. The lawyers have the contracts, and that's as far as it's gone. Okay? So
Does it look bad to ask for an audit? I would think it would look
Absolutely.
good on us.
We will lose people that do not want their reputation over 20 or 30 years as professionals in the service they're not going to stay around for a state audit because it appears that they're part of the problem, and some of these people have only been working for us for 6 months.
You're talking about staff members?
I'm talking about department heads and staff members.
But I don't understand why.
I'm just telling you that say you got a special a department head that just came online here, is doing a tremendous job. He's been in the industry for 20 years. He's not going to ruin his reputation by being privy to a state-called audit on something that has nothing to do with him, but he's the boss of that department that's having a state audit. That's the whole purpose and point of having our city attorney in auditing ourselves, because when you call the state in, it goes into the press for one thing, but then there's, until proven innocent, you're assumed guilty.
But
and that's
it's
why
not
bringing
like-
a state audit will damage the city.
But see, I look at it from the
Especially if
perspective
we're talking
that-
about $400 or $500 or $3,000 worth of
But clearly
mistakes.
there's something there, and I look at it from the perspective that we're asking for help. It's not like some outside agency has called in because they suspect there's something fishy going on. It's us reaching out for help. Look, we want to make sure our books are right, where all of our I's are dotted, our T's are crossed, everyone's in the clear. We do have new folks, so if there are things from the past, it's not their fault. They're here part of the solution, not the problem. Am I wrong?
There's one other thing to keep in mind. The purpose of any investigation is to prove or disprove an allegation. Just because somebody's under investigation doesn't mean they're guilty of a thing. Okay? Just because somebody's... And the only other thing I'll say to your statement, Mayor, is the fact that in other words, they don't have a black eye if they're audited internally, but if they're audited from the state, they have a black eye.
Well, I mean, some of our departments get audited annually by third-party audits on our financial. I'm assuming our departments take internal audits all the time. What you've found is a few things that weren't done, whether either by malicious intent and or just lack of doing their job.
Quality control.
Exactly right. That may well be into the thousands of dollars, but I doubt seriously if it warrants a state attorney's special audit, unless you think there's $10, $15, $20, $30,000 or some subverted plan to undermine the city, just blatant fraud, somebody that's been, trying to profit from the contracts. You don't bring a state auditor general into a city to do an audit unless you got more than just smoke. You have a blazing fire. That's my opinion, but that's a reality professionally for our staff. We've basically purged our city government staff members. We have a few that have been here for more than 3 years. In everything, we've been on a positive growth and positive changes. Our city manager and their department heads are reviewing these policies. You've brought up issues. They've come up and tried to answer some of your things. Maybe not as fast as you would like, Steve, but I'm not too sure if we want to make a move by calling in a third-party audit that may cost us some of our key people. And I have a gut feeling, I know that if I've been doing a job and doing it well, I got hired by this city, and somebody's going to call in an auditor general audit to audit my department, I'm not sticking around for that.
I'd like to hear, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Lance, but you are the city manager, you know your staff. Do you feel that asking for an audit from the state would look negatively if we're asking for it? I mean, do you tend to lean more towards Gary's position or more towards where I'm coming from? And I don't care either way. I really want to know what our staff and city manager think.
I officially turned over 1 year about a week ago in this position, and I think we've made a lot of progress. I'll start out by saying that. When y'all interviewed me for the position, one thing I told you was I will not lie to you, and I have never lied to this group. If you want my honest opinion, then I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I do not, in any way, shape, or form, think it's a good idea to have a state audit come in on this organization. especially, and I will just say this, I would encourage each council member, and I will send this document out if you want me to read the directions related to a survey that we're required to fill out for the grant that we're getting from the U.S. Treasury. If you read those instructions, it will tell you things that they're looking for and things that have happened within our organization within the past year. And I think you all would appreciate knowing what they're looking for in there.
I'd love to see it, and I appreciate your straightforwardness, I really do.
Lance, while we have you on the mic, you've been here for a year and you've been with the city much longer and a department head for a very long time. Do you see any kind of, and certainly we've got a problem with the ADT contract and a few others, but do you see any kind of negligence or potential malfeasance with our finances that raises to the level that we need a state investigation?
No, not a state investigation, and I was embracing the audit that council proposed because that would give me some information that I need to make good decisions. I need facts to make good decisions, and I will be the first one in line to report someone if they're doing something illegal under my watch. Don't worry, I promise you, I will be reporting them myself, but give me the opportunity to do that.
I have an idea, Lance, okay, because first of all, I didn't ask for the state audit this time. That was brought
No,
up.
I mentioned
Okay,
that.
no, but I'm just saying, I'm not advocating that. I said that the first time, and it was an alternative. Here's another alternative, okay? Something to talk about. First of all, like I say, it's been 7 weeks, and basically nothing's been done, okay? What about, Lance, you have your own department heads do a self-audit and report back to you, okay? All right? In other words, do something. The problem is, whether it's Kyle or Kim or any other lawyer, like I said, or any outsider, you can call in anybody. If they're just looking at papers, they don't know what they're looking at. Papers can fool anybody, okay? But if Mr. Burgess looks at all of his contracts and goes back and looks at it, a lot of these things, first of all, many of the things we're talking about certainly happened before I was here, happened before you were here, happened before, that type thing. So that's what I'm saying. We've been here 7 weeks, and it's just another example of nothing getting done. So my alternative would be do a self-assessment, okay? Actually take the continuing service contract. We know, based on Mr. Pete and Paul's email, that there was verbiages in the contracts that were incorrect. For example, sprinkler systems in this building that didn't exist. Have those contracts been modified? I don't know that answer. I'm just asking. Those are the kind of things, we know there's problems there. Let's take the initiative and fix them. So that would be an alternative that's not going to cost us, it's going to cost us staff time and money, but do your own assessment. Do a self-assessment. And that's the whole thing here. I'm not grandstanding. I just want to fix the problem. So I offer that as a suggestion if council would agree with that. Just let you conduct your own audit yourself. Let the department heads take each thing. What contract needs to be fixed, fix it. And then go back like we questioned about the sheriff's office station with the generator. Verify if in fact we paid for it or not for a year or two by mistake. Let's get this figured and let's get finished with it. So that's an alternative, if you're all right with that.
I would take any approach I can take to gain information to make better decisions. And we have been working on improving our processes because that's what this council asked me to do from day one, look at our processes and find where there are flaws and improve those processes. And in a year's time, we have improved many processes. And is it silent and behind the scenes? Absolutely it is. And I probably need to celebrate those changes more with you all so you can see what we're doing. But we are making progress. We are doing the job, and we have to keep the city running while we're doing these side projects. So, I'm not... There's holidays involved here, and I can't tell my staff they can't take holidays, and there's just a lot of spinning plates, is what I like to say, that I have to keep spinning, and to say that we're not doing anything, it's a little unfair. It's quite a bit unfair, because we are keeping a city running and trying to accomplish what you all want. And Mr. Mitchell knows this, and I've told him this. I am on board with what he sees. He reads and reads everything word for word, and he shows me things that I wasn't aware of before. So I appreciate what he points out to me. And I just have to go about it in a manner where I feel comfortable moving it to the next level, and whatever that is, whether it's an improvement program, whether it's changing a policy, whether it's a disciplinary action. I don't know. It could be a lot of things. But I need to have the facts in my hand, real hard facts, not someone's idea of what happened. I want to know that this is really the fact before I pull the trigger on something. And that's all I'm trying to do. That's all.
We already got a motion and we approved to have a third-party auditor come in. We've already got Kyle's firm doing that as well. And so that needs to continue. Now, Mr. Menschel offered another option to add to those.
In lieu of.
Oh, in lieu of? Okay. So
Yeah, I'll make a substitute, or actually, we don't have a motion on the floor right now. So if that's Mr. Menschel's, I think that's probably a pretty good idea. And at the end of the day, there are a tremendous amount of spinning plates that are happening right now. And the most important thing we've got to do is to keep the city business and the city running, in addition to all of our other side issues. So I'll make a motion that we instruct Lance to get with his department heads, and each department head will do a thorough self-audit of their continuing services contracts. I'd like to put perhaps a timeline, a loose timeline on it of around 90 days to be able to come back. And as far as the attorneys are concerned, I believe it's best for them to deal with the giant avalanche of things from legal issues that are on their plate for the moment, and allow them to basically be as consultants or secondary backups. So should we find issues through this self-investigation, you immediately pop over and grab one of the attorneys so that we can begin the process that Steve's talking about to remedying these issues. Because at the end of the day, if we don't need to be paying for generators we don't have, we don't need to be paying for sprinkler systems we don't have. So I'd like to see that
And
beginning.
Parker, if you would, consider canceling out the former directive for them to do it. In other words, we need to
Correct.
cancel that motion.
So the motion is cancel the previous directive. We're going to allow Lance and the department heads to conduct their own independent audits of the continuing services contracts. That puts a scope on it, and within 90 days, come back with us with a report. And if you do happen to find continuing services irregularities that can be quickly and easily solved simply by having probably Kyle communicate with APT or with any of the other contracts, then we'll do that. We don't have to wait the entire 90 days so we can get the ball rolling on mopping this stuff up, because we only have so many resources and we need to get this stuff judiciously spread out.
I got a motion.
That's my motion.
I got a motion.
I'll second it.
Got a second. I've got people in line here to discuss. So are you done? You're good?
I'm good now.
Okay. Next up then will be Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I think in our, Lance, in our strategic workshop we had, whatever you want to call it, I believe it was said that there needed to be a lot more communication between the city manager and the council. And I agree with that 100%. And I hope that starting this year that we can, just like you said, need more communication so we know what's going on, what's happening and what's not happening. Because as far as I know, I'm sitting here thinking there's nothing happening because I don't know. I'll say I know there's something happening because the city's running and, things are happening and whatnot, but I'd like to know what's going on and what's coming up, and those reports that we're getting on a weekly basis. I mean, that was my favorite thing to read, to see what the city was doing, what all the departments were doing, what they were accomplishing, what they were working on, what was coming up. But now it's going to be a monthly thing, and I'm sure that's going to be good as well. And the other reports you're talking about is going to be nice to see. But so hopefully we can, a lot more communication coming up this 2020. And I just wanted to say that when we're talking about this, getting somebody else to come in and do an audit, if we had department heads that, were gonna leave, I'm thinking of myself. If I was leaving or said I would leave, if somebody come in and audited me, then maybe it's because, like some other staff, I believe, have left because they were afraid what was gonna be uncovered. Not because, you're gonna make me look bad, because, if I didn't have anything to do with it, and I didn't have anything to do with it, some in the past that they uncovered that was happening before I ever come online. But, that's just my thought as far as that would go. But that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. And again, I want to thank really everyone here, staff, city manager, our attorneys, the council, because, these are difficult conversations, but unfortunately, because we are elected officials, they have to occur in the public. I mean, we wouldn't have known as a council a lot of what's going on if someone hadn't brought something up at a meeting for us to discuss. But clearly there are certain levels of conversation that are better had in private situations, and I understand where Gary was coming from in terms of his concern that maybe this hadn't been handled behind closed doors. Originally, Mr. Minchell elaborated the fact that it had. So again, these open conversations due to Sunshine Law, it's the whole point of them, to let all of us know what's going on so that we're not left in the dark and we can make informed decisions. And I think tonight was a really, really good example of us talking about a problem that's been identified, listening to our city manager, his guidance, his honesty, telling us what's going on. I mean, you were spot on tonight. I don't think I've ever heard you speak so much in a council meeting, and it was wonderful. It was so informative, and it gave us your insight into the situation. And so, not that I'm trying to make lemonade out of lemons, but really I am, because I think this was a great opportunity for us to air a problem that's going on, find a solution, and work together forward. With that said, I do want to encourage staff. I know from the time I've sat up here and different things that have occurred legally. We had an attorney come in. I was accused of fraudulently using a city credit card. We all know that turned out I was completely not guilty, and in fact, the prior city manager and others had also used their city credit card. That was something that was ultimately resolved. But there have been, through the years, numerous situations that have occurred that have been concerning. So what I'm getting at here is, if you find things, don't be afraid to bring them out. I mean, we need to find things. I know I've heard from multiple staff members and the city manager that every day is like, oh, we just figured this out. We just discovered this. This was done. And so there's lots out there that we need to try to repair, resolve, and move forward in a new direction. So please, if you find something, the best thing you can do is mark it on whatever document y'all are given to do your audits on, and let's figure a way to resolve it and move forward. So thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. We got a motion, we got a second. Seeing no further discussion. Votes unanimous, so moved. Mr. Minchell, you still have the floor.
Yes, sir. Just in conclusion, I'll echo what Dr. Ramswell just said. Thank you for this. Thank you, Lance. Okay. Again, this is something that is it's a work in progress. Okay, period. The key thing that I have to stress, and I want to stress again, 99% of our staff are hardworking and haven't done anything wrong. I'm not sitting up here accusing any one person of anything. I said this on the onset, and I'll say it now, and it's the last time. We don't know what we don't know, okay? There may not be anything else wrong, okay? The fire department goes to a building when they see smoke. Whether there's a fire or not, it's to be determined. We've had some smoke, and we're going to check it out. So I appreciate everybody's input, and I think we've handled it now at the lowest possible level, and honestly, it's the best level to have it at. Because as I said, nobody knows more about their department than the department head. Lance, if a department head doesn't do it right, okay, and that's on you, and you'll deal with that. So I think this is probably the best way we could have gone, okay? And I appreciate it. Thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Oberdare. Mr. Marler.
Thank you, Mayor. didn't have anything originally, but now I got plenty.
Come on, man.
This is to piggyback on what was the last stuff that was said. If you go back and you start figuring out how much we have tasked the staff with in just the last 6 months, and tasked the 2 attorneys that we have on staff in the last 6 months, I could understand why it's been 7 weeks. It might take more than 7 weeks if we went with the other way, instead of going the direction we just with the department heads. Because if you're going to do it thoroughly, you're going to do it thoroughly. But you've got to remember, as the council up here, we keep piling more stuff on the staff, and that requires a lot more work for their work. So in that respect, I have to say, to our attorneys and to all the staff and Lance, if there's something we're doing wrong up here, let us know. In other words, are we putting too much of a burden on the staff, or are we want results quicker than what needs to be done? I think that's part of our problem. Now, the other, I'll leave that issue alone. The other issue is, first, I'm not very good with pronouncing it, so is it livery or livery? What does the SAR say? Or we call it a livery ordinance, a livery ordinance? Because I've said it both ways, and a lot of people have. So tell me which.
Livery.
Livery, okay. That's the subject that really gets me. To me, we are killing the goose with the golden eggs. I realize that we have a congestion in the harbor. We still have to address that. And I think we've tried to look at having a harbor master, somebody that controls the harbor. But are we doing the right thing? Are we trying to put people out of business, or are we trying to help them? Because I think government is getting too involved in stuff that we really don't need to be involved in. We need to make sure that we have a quality system in our city for our residents, but at the same time, do we want to take some residents' right to work away from them? I think we need to go back and look at that ordinance again. If y'all would, either the next meeting or within the next couple of meetings, I'd like to have that ordinance come back under my name, because I really want to reevaluate that. Ms. Carberger brought up parking. That's a sore subject in a lot of ways. Here's my scenario. A building, we approve a DO for a particular piece of property on a particular date, particular year. At that time, they meet all the qualifications for parking. But over the years, we've gotten more people than they have parking for. Not more businesses, but more people. I mean, do we keep expanding and expanding and expanding? Do we punish a particular property owner because he doesn't have adequate parking now, that when he or she was approved of the development order, they had adequate parking according to whatever development order they were under at that time, or whatever ordinances we had? So that's an issue there. How much parking is not enough parking? Do we have parking for any and everybody? No, we don't. We are short on a lot of parking issues. And I'll bring back the subject of, it's time to start looking at the parking garage. We need to look at the facts on Seibert. Well, how tall and how much we can build over there, or we're not going to run it. And it's not particularly for any particular business. It's basically for all our tourists and the locals. I mean, if you look at just take New Year's Eve, I guarantee you there was not a space that was not used for parking somewhere where they weren't supposed to park, but we kind of put our blinders on because it's a special time. But how far do we go with that? How far does the government go if they were approved at the parking for parking during that DO, and then they got the CO for the same reason at the time? Then they're not in violation. They had the parking they were supposed to have. If they don't add anything else to it, then they still have the parking that was allowed then. So I really think we need to go back and revisit public parking again, and I really believe in the way of trying to help all the citizens and not just one particular an entity or anything like that. And lastly, but not least, that's another thing I'd still like to bring back is the parking issues in the next couple of meetings under my name, because I think it's time to really look at parking garages. And I'm going to leave it at that because I'm a little angry about some other things, but I will let that go for now.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Destin.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Mr. Morgan. You have an item here.
Yeah, I do. So the crosstown connector, then this is something to think about, but we've established two things with it. One is that it was designed to become a 4-lane road quite easily, but two, it is certainly going to be a 2-lane road.
I'm sorry, did you say 4-lane?
Yeah, it was designed to become a 4-lane road easily with the large medians, with that in mind. There's nothing planned for it to be a 4-lane. There's nothing on the books. There's no money been set aside. But as it's going to be built now, if we had approved it, it would be a 2-lane road. But those 4 lanes don't matter. Its ability to become a 4-lane road doesn't matter if Legion Drive from Airport to Beach and Azalea Drive are not 4-laneable, which Azalea Drive currently is because it's got large right-of-way. So now whether or not you want to build the road that I would like to see, or if we want to spend more money to redesign this road to be another 2-lane road, I still think it would be good to vacate the right-of-way on Azalea Drive, or at least some of it. I know staff had some issues with it regarding undergrounding utilities, but if you vacate that right-of-way, then you prevent Azalea Drive from becoming 4 lanes forever. And therefore, therefore, the crosstown connector, even if you have those large medians where it could become 4 lanes easily, if you can't 4-lane Azalea, it doesn't matter. And by vacating that right-of-way, it doesn't matter what you do with the crosstown connector. And Legion Drive from Beach Drive to Airport Road,
I like your idea.
And so what I would do is I would move to have our Public Works Director and City Engineer give us a report on whether or not you could build a 4-lane road on Legion Drive from Airport to Beach Drive right now with the right-of-way that we currently have. And if you can, what right-of-way would we need to vacate to prevent that from happening? And then have city staff prepare a report about Azalea Drive right-of-way vacations.
Can I ask I'll second it. Can we include the land use attorney? Because I do know that there's going to be some pre-existing utilities that are in some of these areas, and vacation could have some lingering effects on some of the existing utilities. I just think it'd be best for the land use attorney to be involved through the whole process of developing some sort of strategy, because I do agree with it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I got a motion, got a second. Mr. Braden?
I've never been for abandoning the right-of-ways. I know we abandoned one out in Crystal Beach for 2 homeowners, and then 6 months later, we was talking about putting some parking out there and in that same area, and that would have gave us, if we'd kept that right-of-way, we could have made a pass-through from the parking going through Crystal Beach. I just hate to see us abandon right-of-ways. I mean, it may be one thing we could turn into some parking.
But you don't want to see a 4-lane road through Azalea.
I think Mr. Morgan's trying to throw everybody a peace pipe.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying the only point of that right-of-way on Azalea is for a 4-lane road, and we obviously do not want a 4-lane road. And so why do we need the right-of-way? And if we don't trust future councils to manage this roadway properly or in the way that this current council envisions it, then why would we keep the right-of-way? If we get rid of it now, then we essentially, in perpetuity, because we don't use eminent domain anymore, prevent any future council from building a 4-lane road because the city doesn't own the property.
I just think, I mean, I'm just looking at it as right-of-way period, whether it's, because I know there's other places in Destin that people are wanting this council to abandon the right-of-way.
But if the only use for that right-of-way is negative use is a use that's detrimental to the quality of life in Destin, which that 4-lane road on Azalea would be, why would we keep it?
But we're not, when we could, I'm just thinking that we could use that right of way and other right of ways. I mean, we've got a lot of right of way in the city of Destin, a lot of it we don't use, that could be used for something else. I mean, we talked about putting,
like a 4-lane
closing
road.
down Cybert on
Future
one
council.
side and making some parking on that side, and maybe that can be done down Azalea or something. Right of way in general is, you know, I just don't like doing banning right of ways, whether it's
And
there anyway.
I agree, and we've had right-of-way vacation issues that have come before us that I didn't like and I didn't support, but this one is to prevent a 4-lane road highway coming through town, which has been a big concern of this council's. And
But can we use that right of way for something else?
it's in front of people's houses, so
Big,
probably
big,
not,
giant,
you know. I mean, just
12-foot
common-
wide sidewalk sounds good to me.
That's right, walking,
But we already
biking
have
trail.
sidewalks
I mean,
on,
think
we already
20,
have,
30
yeah,
years.
but we already have sidewalks on one side of Azalea, so just vacate the other side of it.
Yeah, and they're so broke up.
Or at least just
boundary.
vacate enough parcels to where it becomes prohibitive to where if we wanted to rubber stamp a 4-lane road through Azalea, you couldn't do it because we have 5 parcels, approximately 1 acre worth of land that's been vacated, and, you know, the property owner will never give it up because they don't want a 4-lane road in front of their house. So it just, whatever. I'm
Mr. Marlin?
I would like to see if we could, if Chatham would be willing to expand that from not just Azalea in that area, because there are several areas within Destin where the right-of-way is actually causing a problem for in some residential areas because there's so much right-of-way and they don't even have enough room to park a vehicle in there. And I'm talking about
just later, you know, at a future.
I've had
meeting.
several people ask about that though in the last couple of months, and I brought it up once or
Let's
twice.
just stay focused on this particular motion, if you want to introduce.
Well, I'm just
one.
saying, let's not just confine it to just those 2 right-of-ways, but kind of a right-of-way audit, you know, if I hate that word audit, to give an idea, because I think that it'd be more beneficial that way.
Councilman Marlar, if you put those specific requests under your name for the next meeting, you're going to have my full attention to discuss
Okay.
them, but I don't know if it's best to package.
Right,
Okay.
I agree with you, sir. Ms. Ramswell?
I think I've said my piece. I was
Okay.
just, yeah,
All
let's
right.
move on.
All right, we got a motion, we got a second, let's make a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. I do want to remind the public 2 things. One is YouTube went down for about 10 minutes before our first break, and so the entire meeting will be reposted in its entirety tomorrow. And then second of all is after we're done here, we have a couple more folks, opportunity to speak. There'll be another chance for public comment before the meeting's adjourned. I'm up next, and the only thing I would like to, Kyle, to put you on the spot, do you want me to bring up the personnel attorney to look into the Tim Petenpaul deal?
I think that the last motion rendered that unnecessary. If I'm wrong,
all right,
then
we're going to leave
somebody correct
that
me.
alone. I have no further comment, so next up will be Ms. Kopp.
Mine is just a quick update on the Point mezzanine litigation, and that is, per council directive at a prior meeting, we did go ahead and select a mediator, and once we have an initial conversation with him, I'll update you again, but his name is Mr. Mike Dickey.
Any questions or comments to the land use attorney?
Do we have any update on the Fleet lawsuit?
I will defer to Kyle.
This is the Bert Harris lawsuit you're referring to? Because we
I
have
don't
several.
know that it's actually a Bert Harris lawsuit, but I know I'm just curious how, we haven't heard anything on the Fleet and their lawsuits or whatever they're doing or not doing.
The Bert Harris lawsuit's probably the most major lawsuit from the Fleet. That is still in the discovery stages of the litigation. We do have a pretrial scheduling order. If you're interested, I could send it to you. It lays out timelines. The trial for that case is set in June, but there could be a dispositive motion that occurs before then, which, if the city were to prevail, would moot the trial.
So all the depositions are finished?
Not necessarily. I took the deposition of Marianne and Kelly Wines. Lewis's deposition was taken as our corporate representative. That deposition's not fully closed at this point. He could be recalled. We're kind of wrangling over that right now. So.
Thank you.
What? No. I'll save this for private.
Okay. Your turn. Are you done, Ms. Kopp? Your turn, Mr. Regular Attorney.
That make me irregular?
Special.
It's better than being irregular.
All right, well, I'll take that as a compliment then, but I don't have anything.
All right, at this time then, I will take any comments from the public if you'd like to address the podium. Mr. Wampler? It's after 9 o'clock, so your time has been reduced to 45 seconds.
Thank you for your time. You voted no. I've got to come say something. Hey, so the only question I have is the short-term vacation rental task force disbanded at this point?
Yes.
Can we make it official? Say it disbands? So I can talk to Marcy, because I haven't been able to talk to Marcy.
Oh, yeah.
Marcy has resigned. You can talk to
You
Marcy.
talked to her until you blew in the face. She's no longer on the panel. All right, any other comments? Bill? You're regulated to 15 seconds. You get your full 3 minutes, sir. We're happy.
Don't need it.
We're happy to have you.
This is just something I found out today from Cox Communication when my email went down. Okay, Cox did a migration of their servers, and as a result of that, I lost, the least I know of was 6 or 8 emails that I get on a daily basis. That number runs from 6 to 50. Okay, well, since January the 2nd, I've had 0. I worked it all the way up to the migration department so that if you're having any issues with that, you might want to check on it. Because as I say, I personally lost emails. This is just information for everybody. It's Cox, and I called them and I finally got through to somebody. There's absolutely nothing they can do about it. They're gone. Okay? Number 2, I wanted to just make one comment on the guardrail. One of the things I've been hearing about the guardrail is you need to make it wide enough, because what people are doing, even with the sound barrier that y'all, or that whoever put up on Highway 98, it's making people drive more toward the middle of the road when they get to that, because they're afraid of running into the wall. Well, if you put guardrails that are too narrow, you're going to have the same problem. So that's just the only comment that I would like to make on that. I'm in favor of something, but they just need to be, and I'm sure the engineers will handle that part, but keep that in consideration.
Thanks, sir. Seeing no further comments from the public, meeting adjourned.